For some senior ANC leaders to visit parts of the northwest in a new effort to defuse the relentless unrest. Meanwhile, residents of the Eastern Cape town of Keiskammahoek have woken to protest another day following violence yesterday. The nationwide bus strike continues for the 7th day, with the Labour Department now entering the fray.
And later in sport, the Premier Soccer League has charged Kaiser Chiefs with bringing the league into disrepute and misconduct. The charges followed the Nedbank Cup fixture against Free State Stars, where supporters invaded the pitch, assaulted some supporters and security officials, and damaged property at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban.
Very good morning to you. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankee. So this morning we check in and monitor the Mahikeng situation and the bus strike that is now on its 7th day. We also bring you news from the continent. Of course, Sabelle Kirtley is also standing by all your sporting highlights this morning. Very good morning to you. Very happy Tuesday it is, Belen. Are you good?
Very well, thank you, Shante. Good morning to you and good morning to our viewers. We'll be bringing you a full look at what's happening in your sports world and also a look ahead to the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League, which sees the first leg of the tie between Liverpool and AS Roma get underway later today. So there's a preview of that and so much more coming your way at 1:45 the top of the hour. First, though, it's back to Shante for your top story.
The lead story at 9 o'clock, some senior ANC leaders will visit parts of the northwest today in a new effort to defuse the tensions simmering there. Days of riots and looting left a trail of destruction in the provincial capital Mahikeng last week, with protesters burning properties and blockading roads. By Saturday night, the unrest had spilled over to the towns of Taung and Vryburg. The protesters have been calling for Premier Supra Mahmupelo to step down amid corruption and slow pace of service delivery in the province.
It began with a peaceful march for basic health care at the hospital. The complaints, a lack of medication and the hospital being filthy. Hospital staff have been on a go-slow for days now.
So Taung Hospital discharged him because there's a protest here in Taung. So the problem, that guy got a brain tumor and it's a major operation. So we failed, Taung failed us.
Schooling was disrupted by the march.
The reason why we didn't go to school is because there's a march and our principals told us to stay home for our own safety.
The march quickly turned violent, leading to looting of local businesses.
We want roads in our village. Service delivery is very poor in our village.
Many were left frustrated as shops were closed and roads barricaded, including the N18 between Vryburg and Taung.
We are angry at what's going on. People are hungry, we are all hungry, the shops are getting looted.
But now everything is closed and so we cannot even pass by through to Kimberley or back to Bloemfontein. None of the roads are available to us.
As running battles between police and residents ensued, protesters vowed to continue until their demands are met. SABC News, Taung.
Well, service delivery protests continue this morning in Keiskammahoek in the Eastern Cape. Residents are demanding roads and proper housing. Well, yesterday, a municipal building was set alight. Protesters then threatened to target SASSA officers. Police had to use rubber bullets to disperse gathering crowds. Sanko members in the area saying that they want President Cyril Ramaphosa to come and listen to their demands. Protesters say they won't be letting up grievances until they have been addressed. For the latest on the Keiskammahoek protest, Busisiwe James Anna now joins us now for live update. Very good morning to you, Busisiwe. Just take us through an update as to what we saw on the protest that took place overnight, as well as what response has been from government or municipal.
A very good morning to you too, Shante. Well, since last night when residents were protesting in the streets of Keiskammahoek following an incident where they torched alight this municipal building, there were threats that they would torch also the SASA and post office buildings, but that did not happen. After we left, they clashed with the police. We are told that some were arrested and some were released. We are not sure yet if there are people who are in police holding cells, but since this morning I can tell you, Shante, it has been quiet. Residents have started to gather around. Just across me over there are residents who have gathered. They have started singing songs and chanting songs, but police are also on the ground. We saw them removing what was left from the burning tires, the trees that were used to blockade the roads. They are adamant that they will continue with their protest until President Cyril Ramaphosa comes down. We know that at 9:30, the Premier of the Eastern Cape, Phumulo Masualle, is going to be holding a media briefing, updating the province as to what has happened and the issues around Keiskammahoek. The briefing will be in Bisho, in his offices. We are told that he will be touching on what is to happen. If you remember, Shante, 3 weeks ago, when the protest started, residents were calling upon the Premier and the chairperson of the province of the ANC to come and address them. Unfortunately, the Premier could not be available for that. ANC chairperson Oscar Mabuyane did come down and said to them that they will come back. They've had their grievances and it is things that he sees as authentic and they have every right to demand them. And they will come back as the leadership of the ANC and MECs in the relevant departments to come and address them, calling Imbizo to actually give a feedback on the things that they've done and the things that are to be done on the list of grievances that they submitted. 7 days passed and nothing was done. They did not come, but we know that Sanko has been in constant meetings with the provincial leadership in efforts to try and find a solution. Just last week, Shante, we saw a road grader patching the roads, and one thought that things were all good and the meetings did yield some positive results, but it was not to be so, as we saw residents yesterday taking to the streets. They are saying those meetings did not address the challenges that they raised because they want them to properly fix the roads and not do a patch-up job. That is where the problem is. And they're also saying that on Friday, when they were to meet with the provincial leadership, the leadership was nowhere to be found, and that meeting did not sit, and therefore that's why they're taking to the streets. They're also saying that they are calling upon the promises that were made to them to be fulfilled, to call that Imbizo and actually give a report to residents. We did speak to the ANC secretary in the province, Ululama Ncukaitobi, who said MECs in the relevant departments are willing to come and address and give a report. They are just urging the leaders of communities to keep calm and actually suspend the protest and give them an opportunity to come and address them. He was saying that they are even willing to do that today or tomorrow and talk to them. But the residents are saying they want to hear none of it because they've been talking to them. They've been going to Kalata House. They've been engaging with them, and they are not coming to the fore to actually give them a way forward. And therefore, they want nothing less than President Cyril Ramaphosa to now come and address them. Shante.
Now, in terms of the security, we do know that buildings have been torched and roads were blockaded. In terms of security this morning and the contingents and the presence that you've seen in the Keiskammahoek area, can you give us an update on that?
Well, Shante, as I said, police are on the ground. We saw police early in the morning. No violence has taken place so far. And in fact, we've not seen numbers in terms of residents who are grouping to actually start protesting. But just minutes ago, they started regrouping. They started chanting songs. It is yet to be seen as to which way the protest, which direction it will take, and from now moving forward, and if police will be able to control the crowds, because some feel that police yesterday failed to execute their duties and actually make sure that there is law and order in the streets of Keiskamawuk. You will remember, Shante, again, that about 3 weeks ago when police clashed with residents who were protesting, one of the protesters died when police fired rubber bullets at them. So there is that feeling that police are not willing to actually engage fully as they fear of their fears of what happened earlier. It is not yet known, or we've not yet seen how they plan to deal with this. Even the deployment of police from outside is not much that you would confidently say that there's going to be order. There's not going to be any burning tires. There's not going to be any buildings that will be burnt, because this building, Shante, was burnt actually when police were here yesterday. Whether or not the orders that they've been given to them on the ground, the reasons that they are not acting or what, is something that is also yet to be seen or yet to be found out as to how are they planning to deal with this, because residents are adamant that they are going to continue with their protest. We spoke to Sanko chairperson earlier on this morning, who distanced themselves from the burning and torching of this building, saying that it was 4 people who were not part of the protest who set this building alight. And the reason for that, for them not to be able to control the crowds and their protest, is that they had hoped that by 4 o'clock at least they would have gotten some sort of a feedback from the national office bearers to say, is President Cyril Ramaphosa coming? If he's not coming, who is coming? They are saying they contacted Zizi Godwa, who said they were in an NWC meeting and therefore could not come. They are saying if they do not give them a proper response, a direction as to who is going to come and address them, more can happen, more buildings can be torched alight, because they will not be able to control the crowds in the darkest hours in the evening when everyone is scattered around the town. It is really chaotic scenes that we saw yesterday, chaotic scenes that we saw 3 weeks ago, and many question why there hasn't been a decisive action to actually deal with this and actually prevent buildings, municipal buildings, government offices from being affected and being torched alight by residents. But also, Shante, it is important to note that there are divisions even within the community members who are protesting, with some saying, let us not burn the resources that are already there. Let us protest, but let us not vandalize the resources that are already there. Some saying, in this government, the only way that you can be heard is if you torch things alight, is if you burn buildings and burn things. That's only when leadership will come and actually answer the problems that you are facing. The 2 road graders that are in front of this municipal office are the 2 graders that are supposed to be doing the roads that the residents actually demand. But they were torched alight 3 weeks ago. So it is that situation here in Keiskamawuk, Shante, where there are people burning things. There's no one coming. We've just saw minutes ago, one of the managers of this municipality was driving past us, looking at the burnt building. Whether or not what will happen next week when workers need to return to work, what will happen to the little services that this office renders to the people, how will they do that, is also something that will be keeping a close eye on, because as things stand, everything is bent down in these offices. Shante.
Thank you very much for giving us an update from Keiskamawuk in the Eastern Cape. We'll wait that briefing from the Premier of the Eastern Cape just after 9:30. For SABC News, Busisiwe Jemsana. In other news, labour unions representing striking bus workers are set to meet with the employer associations today at a meeting facilitated by the Department of Labour. The meeting is another attempt at resolving the strike, now on its 7th day. The talks between the employers and unions deadlocked last Friday. Thousands of bus drivers are demanding wage increases as well as better working conditions. Well, unions want a 9.5% salary increase, while employers are offering 8.5% for the first year and 8% for the second year. Let's now cross our report Nomowe to Solwandle in Bellville in the Western Cape. She will be giving us an update as to how commuters have been impacted by the ongoing bus strike this morning, as well as some of the other transport issues that commuters have had to face in the Western Cape and Cape Town, with not only buses being on strike, but of course some of the issues that they've had with trains, as well as taxis and the contingent that they've had to deal with regards to the amount of people. Let's cross over now rather to Mangoba. He is ready for us. He is coming to us live from the city centre with the latest. We'll go to Cape Town in just a bit. A very good morning to Mangoba. Are commuters getting used to the morning struggles as they go to work and as the nationwide bus strike enters the 7th day now?
Well, Shante, certainly the frustration of those commuters continues as they face yet another day without transport. Of course, this being one of the few loads that are now being loaded of those bus commuters who have been waiting here for hours. I can tell you that arriving here this morning, there were scenes of chaos here at this taxi rank. I mean, the queues that we saw here this morning stretching hundreds of meters away from the taxi rank itself and on its perimeters as well, showing that really this bus strike is really having an impact in terms of those people, the numbers of the people that they've had to accommodate here in order to try and get to work. And of course, many of them not getting used yet, Shante, to the fact that this strike is still going on 7 days later, saying that there should have been some sort of a resolution by now. But they're saying, of course, that they are hoping that that will happen today when those talks resume. But of course, it's not only impacting those commuters as well only, but seemingly also the taxi drivers are also feeling the pinch of this impasse. One of them here I'll speak to now is Sakile Mieza. Sakile, you were just telling me a few minutes ago that US taxi drivers as well now have to take extra loads of commuters due to the strike, and that you're really not coping.
Yeah, ustrike kwamabhasi kusi-affectile kakhulu, kodwa ke noma kuwukuthi phela thina asithinte ngaleyo ndlela, kodwa abantu bayaphazamiseka ngoba phela abantu basebenza ngesikhathi, itaxi iyahlala ilinde, but nathi siyabona ukuthi umsebenzi uthanda ukuba ngaphe kwethu, khona siyabona ukuthi umsebenzi uthanda ukuba nzimanyana ngoba phela thina abantu siyabalinda. Manje abantu uyabona ukuthi bayakhala, bayacomplain, isikhathi siyabashaya. Manje that's why ngathi manje umsebenzi uthanda ukuba nzimanyana nje ngoba phela abantu basebenza ngesikhathi, basuke bejahe emsebenzini bayangena. Manje nathi siyaphazamiseka, sithandi kanjalo phela kunabazali bethu lana nehlobo nobhuti into efana nalezo. So manje ingakho ngathi lento yamabhasi ingagcina ilungile, abantu bebuyele emsebenzini besebenze ngohlelo ngoba abantu bazophelelwa imisebenzi, kunzima ukuthola umsebenzi ubusebenza imisebenzi ngesikhathi samanje asatholakali. So manje that's why nje ngathi lento ingagcina ilungisekile, abantu begcine bebuyele emsebenzini, inkulumo yabihlangana.
Of course, one of the taxi drivers here at the North Taxi Rank explaining the difficulty that they have, saying that it's also a lot of work for them, saying that for him, what really disturbs him is to see people arriving late at work, and he hopes that this bus strike will be resolved soon so that people will be able to get to work on time. But of course, just confirming as well what we've seen this morning, some of those workers from major retailers also still in queues at this time, and some of them just getting into taxis now way over 9 o'clock. And of course, you know that most of these shops, they open around 8 o'clock. So that means clearly they will be arriving to work. And the sentiment that we've been hearing from many of the workers here is that they have been arriving late since last week, Wednesday, and they are hoping that this strike will now come to its finality so that they can arrive early at work and also not get in trouble with the bosses who, at this point, they say have not been totally understanding the reason for them arriving late. They know there's a bus strike, but they say that maybe they need to wake up a bit earlier. But, you know, with the queues that are here currently, the workers are saying even that doesn't help because there's just a lot of people that are waiting to get into those taxis.
Just very briefly, you know, just bring to the fore some of the other issues that commuters have brought forward in you being able to interact with them on the ground. One of which was initially they had not been, or the strike rather, had not been communicated to them. Have commuters heard, as to how far negotiations are between bus unions and employers?
Well, Shante, I did not hear your question, but what I can say, I would say that there are talks that are going to be held today. They begin today, and those talks will be facilitated by the Department of Labour. You'll recall that last week when those unions and the employers, the negotiations between them broke down last week Friday, one of the sentiments or one of the calls that was made by the unions is that government should step in. They called on the Labour Minister as well as the Transport Minister, Blade Zimane, to be part of the negotiations, to come to the table, to try and help them to find a resolution to this impasse. So definitely what we do understand is that those talks are scheduled to commence today, somewhere in a private location. Of course, they've said that the media will not be allowed to come there, but we might get some sort of a statement later as to how those talks have progressed. But hopefully most of the people here, especially here at North Taxi Rank, hoping that those talks will bring some sort of finality to this issue, and hopefully will bring an end to this strike that has been going on now for 7 days. But of course, earlier on here at the North Taxi Rank, the General Secretary of SAFTU also making his way here to garner support, of course, for that national strike that is expected to be held tomorrow by SAFTU. But of course, he also spoke to us about this issue of the wage negotiation in the bus sector. And as I hand over to you, Shante, let's listen to what the General Secretary of SAFTU, Zwelinzima Vavi, had to say about the strike tomorrow, the national strike that's planned, as well as the bus strike.
The employers have been unbelievably intransigent. We hope that after 7 days of the strike today, they will come to their senses. The 8.5% is just not acceptable, will not break the strike. The workers have come down all the way from 12% to 9%. These employers should be ashamed that they're still sticking at 8% when there's only now 1% difference between the strike, ending the strike, and continuation with this type of inconvenience on the part of our people. We are calling on the bus employers, please resolve the strike. You have all of the means to put this inconvenience to the past, and so that workers can return to their normal life of being able to use any means of transport they choose.
People will say that I'm maybe a member of SAMU or maybe a member of a SAFTU union. So what happens then? People say, I'm not part of SAFTU. Can I still partake in the strike?
The strike is not a SAFTU strike anymore. It is a worker strike. It protects every worker, be they in COSATU, FEDUSA, NACTU, be they not belonging to any union, because the majority of workers in this country, 76% of them, do not belong to any union because they've lost hope on unions that do not protect them against labor brokering, against casualization and outsourcing. We are calling on all of those workers, please join the strike tomorrow. Make a final stand. Defend your hard-won constitutional rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. The right to strike is the only weapon workers have here in our country and everywhere else in the world to defend their interest. Without the right to strike, workers are left with their hands tied at the back. This is what Cyril Ramaphosa COSATU deal means. Workers will not be able to have any strike again in the future because it will be impossible for any union, big or small, to be able to jump through all of the hurdles that they are putting on their way to strike.
That was Mangoba Mkunu in Johannesburg City Centre giving us an update. Let's cross our reporter Nomawethu Solwandle in Bellville in the Western Cape to see how commuters have been impacted by the ongoing bus strike this morning. Very good morning to you, Nomawethu. Of course, a rainy and cold situation in Cape Town this morning. Take us through how the situation, if any, is different from the past couple of days.
Well, a very good morning to you, Shante. Well, it's certainly been a very busy morning for us here in Cape Town. We started off at Nyanga Junction, the train side, and we spoke to a couple of commuters there because ever since the bus strike started, we've been focusing a lot on the taxi side of things, where we saw snaking queues at various taxi ranks around the city of Cape Town. So today we decided to focus a little bit on the train commuters, and they train commuters were actually telling us that, you know, it's not because of the bus strike. They've faced a number of challenges for a number of years where they are dealing with trains that are constantly delayed. And another important thing that came out from those commuters was that sometimes trains just actually stop in the middle of nowhere. They never told what's going on. They become victims of crime. So on our way from Nyanga to Bellville station, we actually saw this happening where trains had literally stopped for a number of hours. This one that you see going past here is actually one of those trains that was actually delayed here. We saw a number of commuters actually getting off the train, making other alternatives to get to their different work spaces or to school or to wherever they were going. But it's a serious inconvenience when it comes to trains here. I'm just going to speak to some of the commuters that have been standing around here. When we arrived here, they said that they had been delayed for at least 3 hours. So I'm just going to speak to them just to find out their views. So you were actually in one of the trains that stopped here indefinitely. Just tell us about your experience.
My experience, I can tell you, my experience is an everyday thing. It's an every week thing. You're always late. You send photos to your supervisors. You send photos to management. They will say you're downloading these photos. And it's a big problem when it comes to us commuters that actually travel this train and actually rely on and depend on PRASA, because majority of Cape Town or of South Africa travels via train. And they always, you come late every day at work. I start off past 7. I get on a train in the morning, every morning, 20 to 6. And 20 to 6, that train left now just 9:30, if I'm exact words. So I just think that somewhere we should meet along the line, because it can't happen like this every day. Every day is the same excuse. So I don't see that they're putting in extra effort. And at the end of the day, we're paying for tickets and we're losing out money at work. So we're losing out either way, and we're not gaining nothing from PRASA.
How often does this happen? Because when I arrived, I saw a PRASA vehicle actually arriving to fix the situation. How long had you been standing here, and had anything been communicated to you?
Nothing else. If you're on like stranded in the middle of nowhere, nothing is. They don't communicate with you. Nothing. Like they came now, if I can be exact, before 9. They arrived here, and the train was standing here before 6 o'clock this morning, and it only left now.
I've been speaking to people, earlier that are train commuters. Is this because of the bus strike? Are the delays because of the bus strike, or is it something that you see often?
PRASA cannot blame bus strike or any taxi strike, nothing. This is an everyday thing of the week. Either you come home late at night or you come late to work in the morning. It's an everyday thing with PRASA. You do not know. When people ask you what time is the train, you can't tell them the time of the trains, because they drive on their own time here.
You told me earlier that you had already bought a monthly ticket.
You buy your monthly ticket, it goes to waste. And back in the days in Metro Rail, what they used to do is they organize buses for whenever trains are like this. Nowadays with PRASA, they don't organize or nothing, so you must find your own way. They even tell you on the station, find your own alternative way to transport to get that work.
Well, thank you very much for your time. That there was one of the commuters that has been stranded here in the middle of nowhere, literally, because we were on our way. And when we witnessed the situation, we were actually on our way to Bellville station. So he actually says he was supposed to be at work at around 7 o'clock. He's still standing here. We did see a couple of PRASA people that actually arrived here to attend to the situation. We did see 2 trains leaving, but if my colleague Clinton Surf can just pan to my right here, you'll see that there is another train that is still standing there indefinitely. You'll actually see a number of commuters actually just walking on the train tracks, making an alternative or making alternative ways to get to work. But also, I think an important thing when it comes to these trains just stopping in the middle of nowhere is that people are actually not safe. This is something that one of the commuters at Nyanga Junction also alluded to earlier, that when the trains just stop in the middle of nowhere, they become victims of crime. They are robbed and then the criminals just jump off the train. So it's a serious issue here in Cape Town. And I must say, when we moved from Nyanga Junction to where we are at the moment, it took us more than an hour and a half. So the roads are also very congested because of the bus strike. We'll go now to the Belleville train station just to check what the situation is there at the moment. But with that, it's back to you in the studio, Shante.
Thank you very much for that. Nomowethu, we will be catching up with you as you make your way there to the bus station. Let's have a look at what we can expect coming up after the break. We tell you all about the world's first complete penis and scrotum transplant. This and more when we come back.
Shervin Bricebys, SABC News, New York.
Paul Barber, SABC News, London.
Ntebo Mokobo, SABC Ufa go tswa mono Russia.
Neha Punia, SABC News, Saharanpur in Uttar Pradesh in India.
Other than that, I've enjoyed every single moment of it.
SABC News, Soweto, Johannesburg.
The Canadian police say they believe a van driver who knocked down and killed at least 10 people in Toronto acted deliberately. The United Nations has urged parties to the Iran nuclear deal not to abandon it. In a bid to raise awareness about climate change, one South African family is touring the African continent powered only by vegetable oil. Well, leading at the half hour, the Lily Gold mine in Barberton, Mpumalanga, has been bought by new investors. Vantage Goldfields sold the mine to Siyakhula Sonke Empowerment Cooperation. The mine made international news when a pillar collapsed, trapping 3 miners 2 years ago. Well, Pritin Kambule, Ivan Nisi, as well as Solomon Nyerende, who were inside a container office during the collapse, were plunged 60 meters underground. Their bodies were never recovered. 75 workers survived the tragedy. More than 1,000 workers have remained jobless since the incident. With a new company coming on board, families and fellow mine workers are hoping the bodies of their colleagues will be retrieved when operations resume. They are also hoping they can return to work. Continuing, the Department of Mineral Resources, under the leadership of Gwede Mantashe, has sought leave to appeal against a High Court ruling in favor of the Chamber of Mines. The department says 2 of 3 judges erred in deciding that the mining charter was not legally binding. On the 4th of April, the High Court in Pretoria ruled that the first two versions of the mining charter did not require producers to top up black shareholding levels permanently if they previously met the minimum 26% requirement. The judgment was hailed at the time by the chamber and investors as good for settling some of the uncertainty that had dogged the South African mining industry for years. Mantashe and the department outlined 9 points over which they feel two judges misjudged. They say they are reasonable prospects for a successful appeal because there is a dissenting judgment. This can take anything up to 18 to 24 months. Well, the Amadiba Crisis Committee, which is opposed to mining in their land, has taken the Department of Mineral Resources to the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria. The community from the Eastern Cape wants a declaratory order that will prevent such a project from occurring. The applicants from Xolobeni requested the court to rule that the department cannot issue a mining license without their consent. The mine is owned by the Australian corporation Mineral Commodities and could become the largest titanium mine in the country. But Xolobeni community is opposed to this. Advocate Tembeke Ngukabati argued before court that communities only knew of the application of the mining rights in 2015. Their objection to mining has been ignored by government. If successful, this case will set a precedent for other communities affected and threatened by mining in the country. Well, let's get more clarity on this matter. In our Pretoria studio, we are now joined by Amadiba Crisis Committee's Nontle Butuma. Very good morning to Nontle. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Firstly, briefly give us a background of your case and where exactly it is at this stage.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me here. Our case at this stage, we just want Department of Minerals and Energy to just acknowledge that as people of Xolobeni or the people of South Africa, we have a right to say no. That is why we're in High Court. And it's been quite a long time this court case been started. It's more than 20 years, but the argument was there on the ground. It's the first time we take this matter to court. That is why we just push that as communities, we have a right to say no, and especially when there is a mining company come to your area, we need to give a consent as communities, not only the government just decide on behalf of us without us. That is why today we want to be protected as citizens of South Africa when it comes to mining, because at the end, who is suffer when the consequences of the mining happening on the ground? It's us. But when it comes to who take a decision, it's not us.
Essentially, what are your objections and what has been offered to the community of Xolobeni?
The mining company just offer that they're going to build houses, roads, clinics, etc. You know, but for us that we are living there, it's an exchange. Why we need to exchange our land to get those services? Are we not the citizens of South Africa? Why we need to exchange the land to get the services? Because we vote every 10 years when there's elections. We're supposed to get those services before we exchange our land. That is why we said that we're not going to exchange our land to get those services. But it's a pity, as I'm speaking, our community is not being developed in the name of we anti-development. We are not anti-development. We are for development, but we want their development that is our own choice of option. We have a right to choose what kind of development, because we know ourselves better than anybody else. That is why we said that the government must not impose their own development on top of our heads.
With that being said, and you know, having the calls for wanting development in the community and in the immediate area, is you know, the objections against this not perhaps hampering some of those efforts to grow the broader economy and development in the area?
You know, if we're looking at a so-called economy, we need to ask ourselves, it's economy for who? For individuals, because when it comes to a mining development, we are not benefiting. Go everywhere where there's mining. People are poor, and they're not benefiting. How can you call that it's uplifting the economy of the country? Who is a country actually? Are those individuals? That is why it's so important right now as community to have a right to give a consent when the mining is coming, to say we give a permission that you can come and mine when we agree. But it's a pity we can see our laws are not on our side, because it says that the laws in terms of the MPRDA, it says that the mining can start the operation and thereafter start the negotiation of the compensation, which is absolutely wrong, because at the time when they're operating, they're making profit where our people are being displaced. You don't have time. There's much pressure on you. You don't have time. How come you work and then you negotiate? What kind of a law they were just designed? Because you cannot talk and work at the same time. You need to negotiate and then you work.
Essentially, what are your hopeful outcomes that will be coming out of this case, and possibly a precedent that can be set going forward in terms of mining rights and getting consent from immediate communities?
What we're hoping is that if the government of South Africa, it's a government of the people, will listen the voices of the communities right now. And also, if this case we won, we're not only winning only for the people of Kolobeni, we're winning for all the Africans, because what is happening is not only happening in Kolobeni, it's happening all over the country where the communities, there's mining. That is why we said that it will protect the vulnerable, poor communities, because you can see where they discovered the minerals, they always go where the rural areas. They never go in the suburbs, but minerals are everywhere because they are targeting the vulnerable rural communities. That is why right now we stood up as communities to say the only thing it's important is land than allow the mining, because mining is not only the option. There is other options. For example, in my case, agriculture is an alternative. Tourism is an alternative, but our government never listened to us. Always push that the only option when it comes to development, it's mining, which is not true. Mining is not only the development can make the economy of the country run perfectly.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning from Amadiba Crisis Committee, Nontle Butuma, and giving their views on not getting consent with regards to mining rights and licenses. In some international news now, Canadian police say they believe a van driver who knocked down and killed at least 10 people in Toronto acted so deliberately. Witnesses say the vehicle travelled at speeds along the pavement for nearly a kilometre, ploughing into pedestrians. A further 15 people were injured, and some very critically.
The lunch hour turned deadly in Toronto Monday when a driver in a white van plowed into pedestrians on a busy sidewalk. At least 10 people are dead, 15 injured.
We have one person in custody and the investigation is ongoing.
Police have identified the suspect as 25-year-old Alec Manassian. At least one witness described the driver as appearing to deliberately target victims on a rampage that went on for a mile. Another witness, Steve Cortese, said he saw one man get hit.
He was just walking, he was in the middle of the intersection, and the van just went right into him, plowed right into him. And then apparently he drove down further, and he went onto the sidewalk by the next building, and he hit more people there and just kept going.
The incident comes as the group of 7 foreign ministers from U.S., Canada, Britain, and others were meeting in the city's downtown area about 18 miles away. A U.S. security source says terrorism is the leading theory about the driver's motive.
Well, indeed, a soldier wounded by an improvised explosive device in Afghanistan has received the world's first complete penis and scrotum transplant at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. Visuals may be graphic to some viewers. Well, a team of 9 plastic surgeons and 2 urological surgeons operated on the veteran, whose identity was not disclosed, for 14 hours on the 26th of March. The team transplanted an entire penis, a scrotum without testicles, and a partial abdominal wall from a deceased donor. The wounded man, who requested to be anonymous, has recovered from the surgery and is expected to gain full function of his transplanted penis. He is expected to be discharged from hospital this week.
A very good morning to you, and thank you so much indeed for choosing Morning Live.
But I want to know the basic thing.
Griselda Lewis, SABC News, in Parktown, Johannesburg.
Zimbabwe, Mswandile Mbeje, SABC News, Luanda, Angola.
Let's take a look at your market indicators.
Thanks for staying with Morning Live. Let's bring you your sports news.
Let's take a look at your satellite image.
Set the agenda for the day with Morning Live.
A very good morning to you. Welcome back to Newsroom. Let's bring you your sports news. The Premier Soccer League has charged Kaiser Chiefs Football Club with bringing the league into disrepute and misconduct. Please note the following visuals are graphic. The charges followed the Nedbank Cup semi-final against Free State Stars. The aftermath saw supporters invade the pitch, assault some supporters and security officials, and damage property at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban. Kaiser Chiefs will appear before the Premier Soccer League Disciplinary Committee next Thursday, the 3rd of May at 6 o'clock in the evening. The club were fined 250,000 rand last week, with 200,000 rand suspended after the unruly behaviour of their fans in a league match against Chippa United 3 weeks ago. The recent incident will invoke the full implementation of the punishment, with the whole amount now payable. In one of the harshest punishments in local football, Orlando Pirates were last week ordered to play tomorrow's league encounter against Bidvest Wits at Orlando Stadium behind closed doors after they were charged with contravention of Law 54, which relates to misconduct. More from that story. PSL Chairman Ivan Khoza has called for the amendment to the South African Special Risks Insurance Act, which governs the staging of sporting events in the country. He says the South African Police Service should take a full responsibility in terms of providing adequate security at football venues.
The Act says that, the commissioner must appoint an event authorized member. What happened in this instance, the authorized member that was appointed did not come on the first meeting on the 17th, where the planning must take place. He only came on the implementation day, on the 21st, when the game was taking place. There's a problem already. You can't implement what you didn't plan for. Now you can imagine if it goes to the DC, that instance, it's a discussion for another 6 months. To say, why did you allow that thing to happen? But sponsors, they've got the obligation to, we've got the obligation to the sponsors, to the broadcast, to everybody, games must go on. Now, if an event of this nature happens, now that's why I do not go to the details of this, because these are things we're going to raise again with the minister, that you, as we brief you on the 29th of March, it has happened again.
The South African Police Service in the province have set up an investigation into the matter. Spokesperson for SAPS KZN spokesperson Brigadier J. Naika was speaking earlier to Morning Live. Please note the following visuals on our graphic.
We've taken note of the comments in the media. The acting provincial commissioner has appointed a very senior team to investigate. This team is led by a Major General. They have begun the investigation yesterday. You must remember, in the beginning, the Office of the Acting Provincial Commissioner received a plan from the police station that was responsible for that precinct. In their plan, obviously, they informed us that that plan was informed by the risk assessment as well as the categorization of the event. We are now going through the plan to see that if that plan was executed as stated, whether the members from the SAPS, the private security and other security agencies were in place. And we're also going to see that if any of these deficiencies impacted on the violence that we saw in the stadium.
Yeah, but while following the resignation of head coach Steve Komphela, Kaiser Chiefs have decided that Patrick Mabedi will take charge of the first team for the remainder of the current season. The Malawian was the assistant to Komphela, who resigned after the team fell out of the Nedbank Cup at the semi-final stage this past weekend. Mabedi, who played for Amakhosi from 1998 to 2006, takes over in the interim from former South African captain and centre-back Komphela, who failed to win a trophy during 3 seasons in charge, with his contract due to expire in June. Mabedi captained Kaiser Chiefs to back-to-back premiership titles in 2004 and 2005, while he was also part of the team that won glory on the African continent, winning the 2001 African Cup Winners' Cup. Mabedi will be assisted on the bench by Arthur Zwane, who is in charge of Chiefs' reserve team. Zwane joined Amakhosi in 2000, playing for the first team until 2010. In the meantime, the search is on for a new coach for next season. And Liverpool are in the UEFA Champions League semi-finals for the first time in a decade, while their opponents, Roma, have one other last 4 appearance, which came in 1984. The two will go head-to-head at Anfield tonight in the first leg of their tie. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp has urged the club's fans to show respect to Roma when they arrive at the stadium. Liverpool are being investigated by UEFA after their supporters threw objects at the Manchester City bus, causing damage when they arrived for the quarter-final first leg at Anfield this month.
This is such a fantastic football club, such an outstanding football family, known for fantastic atmospheres all over the world. So we don't need to throw whatever on the bus of the opponent team. If we can do what we did, creating an atmosphere even in front of the stadium, yeah, let's do it. I'm a big fan of that. But please show the respect they deserve.
The quest for a place in the final of the UEFA Champions League begins tonight. The first leg of the semi-final between Liverpool and Roma takes place. Liverpool will be buoyed after Mo Salah won the Players' Player of the Year, an incredible return of 41 goals in 46 appearances. Saw Mohamed Salah crowned Premier League Players' Player of the Year on Sunday. He'll be key against his former club, Roma, who will have to shut him out. Tomorrow it's Bayern Munich who play host to holders and 12-time winners Real Madrid. Staying with football, this time in the English Premier League, Theo Walcott did his best to boost Sam Allardyce's approval rating as the Everton winger clinched a 1-0 win against Newcastle United in their Premier League encounter last night. Allardyce has been under fire for Everton's dour style of play since he was hired in November, and fans called for his dismissal following a draw at struggling Swansea City in their previous match. The pressure on the former England manager was increased by his own club last week when Everton took the curious decision to send a survey to a group of supporters asking them to rate his performance on a scale of 1 to 10.
Because he saw that Jagielka, his centre-back partner, was out of the game, so he came across and made it.
But Velassi wants to cross it.
It came to Walcott, who fires Everton into the lead. Well, that's clever for Sam Allardyce.
Team South Africa, who proudly flew the flag at the Commonwealth Games in Australia earlier this month, finally got their day in the sun. The team bagged 37 medals on the Gold Coast, and their achievements were celebrated in an open bus parade through the streets of Pretoria yesterday.
Autographs and selfies were the order of the day as fans got a chance to interact with the stars of the Gold Coast on the streets of the capital. Team South Africa finished the Games in 6th place on the medals table with 13 gold medals.
Coming in here and experiencing it firsthand and taking selfies, signing autographs, that's what it's all about. So a big thank you to everybody who came out today and for the loving support we've had over the last couple of weeks.
It's cool to see all those hundreds of people actually like supporting you, and I mean they love Caster Semenya, so yeah.
The newly appointed Minister of Sport, Thokozile Xasa, also joined in on the fanfare.
We made it a token of appreciation by taking them to communities so that communities themselves can celebrate them, can celebrate their heroes.
For the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee, the athletes' performances at the Commonwealth Games is seen as a barometer for future events, and the next big date on their calendar is the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo. Plans are already afoot, and Sascock believes that 15 medals in Tokyo is a realistic figure. Samantha Mari, SABC News, Pretoria.
That concludes a look at your sports bulletin. Time now for your weather.
The Western Cape needs national government to fulfill its mandate on ensuring the bulk water supply.
We must ensure that the city of Cape Town never confronts this particular situation again.
The ESCOM is serious about stamping out corruption, which is why the market is now beginning to accommodate us.
Looking at neighboring countries, expecting Botswana just to see partly cloudy skies with a half 34 in Gaborone.
News today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Our stories.
How do I begin?
Our lives. When all seems to fail, we will raise our voices a bit louder for our justice.
Well, I went into absolute shock. My whole body was shaky. I couldn't hold a phone, but there he was. I couldn't believe the nonchalant that they were still in the area 2 weeks later.
And in times when the justice system is not able to help us with our individual battles.
I'm willing to do anything. What are you doing? Nothing. Feeling sorry for yourself? No, it's not an option.
These are our stories on Cutting Edge Channel 404.
When I was passing the casino, I said, that edge came, said, I'll just try, you never know. You might go home with 80,000, times 4 the amount that you have. And that stupid day, I lost all my money.
Never allow glamorous lifestyles to push you beyond your means.
The awakening moment was that 2007 when I left my children alone. I realized this is hurting me.
Ask for professional help if gambling is controlling you. Know when to stop.
I faced reality that, you know what, for you there's no quick reach, you know, so you just have to work hard. So it's gone.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
Senior ANC leaders to visit parts of the Northwest in a new effort to defuse the relentless unrest. Meanwhile, residents of the eastern Cape town of Keiskammahoek have woken to protest another day following violence yesterday. The nationwide bus strike continues for the 7th day, with the Labour Department now entering the fray.
And later in sport, the Premier Soccer League has charged Kaiser Chiefs Football Club with bringing the league into disrepute and misconduct. The charges followed the Nedbank Cup fixture against Free State Stars, where supporters invaded the pitch, assaulted some supporters and security officials, and damaged property at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban.
Very good morning to you. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. This morning coming up, we'll be monitoring the situation in Mahikeng, as well as giving you live updates as to the protests that are taking place in Keiskammahoek. We have heard word that the Premier is set to make an address this morning. We'll also be giving you news from the continent. Ben Kirtley is standing by with all your sporting highlights this morning. Very good morning to you, Valen. You good?
Very well, thank you, Shante. Good to be with you and good to be with our viewers. We'll bring you a full sports bulletin at 1:45 the top of the hour. First, though, lots happening on the current affairs side. Let's go back to the news desk for your top story. Here's Shante.
Your lead story at 10 o'clock, violent protest actions in the Northwest continue to spread to various parts of the province. This time, residents of Stella near Vryburg have now joined in to demand better service delivery. Meanwhile, ANC leaders in the province are also expected to meet today to shed light into the anti-Supra Mahumapelo campaigns. SABC's Selwane Kakao is monitoring the situation and has sent an update.
We're coming live to you from Stella, which is a small town not too far from Vryburg, where we were yesterday for these protest actions. So today, we do see that residents have burned this municipal building right behind me. We're just quickly going to speak to one of the residents who can shed some light into what are their issues this morning. Okay, Ma, just tell me, we see the building is burned. What are the issues in this area?
Gore go sitse masepala go irile bana ba lekešene ga di ba go madibokopane gore ba tle mono mo ba bangwe ba tseiwa ba ba sa tle go bogote ba bangwe ba tle ka dikgang tsa gore ba tle ka di-transfer di se go sekolong mara ba mo kgone go tseiwa ba mo ga kgone go tseiwa di tse go dirilwang jana ka gore gate batho mo Stella ba dira ka apartheid le ba principal tsa teng. Hey, thank you.
Oh, okay, basically what she's saying right now is that what they want is employment opportunities for their children. We also hear that service delivery is a bit of a challenge in this area.
But ba bua ka khanya ya matlo ba bua ka khanya gore why go dirwa apartheid mo Stella. Apartheid se o temo Stella ka gore le rona ga se ntse di 40 ranta le ko sekolong tsa di toilet mara batho ba ba tsentso mo sekolong ba bangwe ba kgone go ntsha di 40 ranta rona ga re kgone go dintsha ka gore re ba re ka dintsha ka di maelo a kgwedi.
Oh, okay. Well, the other issue that they're talking about in terms of service delivery is the issue of housing and toilets. It's coming across as their main concerns in regards to service delivery. Another issue of importance that we want to touch on is that the situation in Taung remains tense this morning. Schooling is still disrupted. People are still protesting in various areas of that part of Taung. We hear shops are still closed after some were looted yesterday. What we understand also is that the ANC leadership in the province, or all regional leaders of the ANC as well as the Provincial Executive Committee, will be meeting today, briefing the media about what they believe to be a secret operation that is behind this anti-Supra Mahumapelo protest actions that we are seeing spreading across various areas of the Northwest. We'll definitely be giving you an update a little bit later on at that press briefing. Back to you for now, studio.
Well, some senior ANC leaders will visit parts of the Northwest today in a new effort to defuse the tensions simmering there. Days of riots and looting left a trail of destruction in the provincial capital, Mahikeng, last week, with protesters burning properties and blockading roads. By Saturday night, the unrest had spilled over to the towns of Taung and Vryburg. Protesters have been calling for Premier Supra Mahumapelo to step down amid corruption and the slow pace of service delivery in the province.
It began with a peaceful march for basic health care at the hospital. The complaints, a lack of medication and the hospital being filthy. Hospital staff have been on a go-slow for days now.
So Taung Hospital discharged him because there's a protest here in Taung. So the problem, that guy got a brain tumor and it's a major operation. So we failed. Taung failed us.
Schooling was disrupted by the march.
The reason why we didn't go to school is because there's a march and our principals told us to stay home for our own safety.
The march quickly turned violent, leading to looting of local businesses.
We want roads in our village. Service delivery is very poor in our village.
Many were left frustrated as shops were closed and roads barricaded, including the N18 between Vryburg and Taung.
We are angry at what's going on. People are hungry, we are all hungry, the shops are getting looted.
But now everything is closed and so we cannot even pass by through to Kimberley or back to Bloemfontein. None of the roads are available to us.
As running battles between police and residents ensued, protesters vow to continue until their demands are met. Olebogeng Khosilinzwe, SABC News, Taung.
Well, Health Minister Unrest says the medical depot in Mahikeng has now been secured by members of the National Defence Force, and personnel have started delivering medication and other basics to district hospitals. Motsoaledi visited the north to assess the state of public health amid the 2-month-long Nahau strike. Shortages of medication and other medical tools were already being experienced in many health facilities. Earlier, SABC spoke to the Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi.
The strike has affected the depot. They were not allowing medicines to get out of the depot. There's only one depot that supplies all the 22 hospitals and about 400 clinics in the Northwest Province. They get their medicines from one depot, and it was closed down because of the strike. And so we told the pharmaceutical companies to go and supply at the health facilities themselves rather than at the depot. That's when some of the health facilities started closing down, like the clinics. So yeah, because over the weekend we sent the South African military health services from the Defence Force, the depot was secured. It was found that the private company, the private security company rather, that is guarding the depot was also part of the disruption. So that security company has been sent packing, and the army has now secured the depot. And as I left yesterday, medicines were now being delivered to all over. So the shortage of medicine was not because the government the depot doesn't have medicine, but it's because it was sealed down.
And Minister, surely the deployment of the army in that province is just a temporary measure. Ordinary people, patients are suffering the most. This is, of course, due to the grievances that the workers have. Are you able to intervene in that level? Well,
of course, sending the army is a temporary measure. It can't be forever. It's always temporary. Even in 2010, you remember during the national strike, we did send the army while negotiations are going on. We will definitely meet the union and the province and try to negotiate. But my going there, Palisa, was because regardless of what grievance people have, we do not think they must punish ordinary people, especially the poor and the sick, who are going to look for health services, because they are not guilty in any way in whatever is happening in Northwest. They are actually victims, and they can't be victimized twice.
And we do know, of course, that turning patients away from medical facilities, Minister, is a violation of the Constitution. Do you perhaps not foresee some problems of unnecessary lawsuits going forward? We've just come out of the Life Esidimeni tragedy. Surely you wouldn't want to go the same route again?
Well, Palisa, health workers are not on strike. There's no doctor or no nurse who's on strike as far as I'm concerned from the areas I visited. But they get turned away, they get intimidated. Like, for instance, the biggest health center, community health center in Mahikeng, which is in Unit 9. When I went there yesterday, after visiting Mahikeng Hospital, I found nobody there. But the senior people in the district told me that the nurses do come every day in the morning. They see the chronic patients and run away. This is a clinic that sees about 7,000 people per month. But yesterday they saw only 30 people and went away. So when I ask why only 30 patients are coming, they say, the nurses say they fooled some of the patients because these are chronic patients, they know them. And the patient themselves said, no, we've been warned not to come to the clinic because we'll be in trouble. Now the problem, Palisa, is that nobody takes responsibility for this. There's no union which came forward and say, I'm the one who's closing clinics. I met the national leadership of NEHAU, and they said, no, we are on strike, we have got demands, but we are not closing down any health facilities. Not us who are doing this closing of health facilities, not us who have cordoned off the depot. So that's the problem we're having.
Well, service delivery protests continue this morning in Kamahuk in the Eastern Cape. Residents are demanding roads and proper housing. Well, yesterday a municipal building was set alight. Protesters then threatened to target SASSA officers. Police had to use rubber bullets to disperse gathering crowds. SANCO members in the area saying they want President Cyril Ramaphosa to come and listen to their demands. Protesters say they won't be letting up grievances until they are addressed. Labour unions representing striking bus workers are set to meet with employer associations today at a meeting facilitated by the Department of Labour. The meeting is another attempt at resolving the strike, now on its 7th day. Talks between the employers and unions deadlocked last Friday. Well, thousands of bus drivers are demanding wage increases as well as better working conditions. Unions want a 9.5% salary increase, while employers are offering 8.5% for the first year and 8% for the second year.
Have been unbelievably intransigent. We hope that after 7 days of the strike today, they will come to their senses. The 8.5% is just not acceptable, will not break the strike. The workers have come down all the way from 12% to 9%. These employers should be ashamed that they're still sticking at 8% when there's only now 1% difference between the strike, ending the strike, and continuation with this type of inconvenience on the part of our people. We are calling on the bus employers, please resolve the strike. You have all of the means to put this inconvenience to the past, and so that workers can return to their normal life of being able to use any means of transport they choose.
People will say that I'm maybe a member of SAMU, or maybe a member of a consulting union. So what happens then? People say, I'm not part of SAFTU. Can I still partake in the strike?
The strike is not a SAFTU strike anymore. It is a worker strike. It protects every worker, be they in COSATU, FEDUSA, NACTU, be they not belonging to any union, because the majority of workers in this country, 76% of them, do not belong to any union because they've lost hope on unions that do not protect them against labor brokering, against casualization and outsourcing. We are calling on all of those workers, please join the strike tomorrow. Make a final stand. Defend your hard-won constitutional rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. The right to strike is the only weapon workers have here in our country and everywhere else in the world to defend their interest. Without the right to strike, workers are left with their hands tied at the back. This is what Cyril Ramaphosa COSATU deal means. Workers will not be able to have any strike again in the future because it will be impossible for any union, big or small, to be able to jump through all of the hurdles that they are putting on their way to strike.
Thousands of workers are expected to take to the streets tomorrow for a one-day strike following the South African Federation of Trade Unions plans to make the country ungovernable. To talk about the latest on the strike, we are now joined by SAFTU's acting spokesperson, Mr. Patrick Craven. A very good morning to you, Mr. Craven. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Of course, your views on the sentiment that SAFTU is prepared to put South Africa on what has been described as on a knife's edge in the name of, making the country ungovernable for tomorrow?
Well, I don't know what the knife edge is referring to, but for many workers in South Africa, particularly those in casual jobs, those who are unemployed, they've been living on a knife edge for years. And we believe that the legislation which the government is about to introduce will make things even worse. We have huge levels of unemployment. More and more people are living in poverty, and many are going to bed hungry. We're also the most unequal society in the world. And this is why we're so opposed to the idea that 20 rand an hour is an acceptable national minimum wage. And we want the workers of South Africa, not just members of SAFTU, not even just members of unions, but non-union workers, unemployed workers, informal traders, to join this protest tomorrow, which will be peaceful and orderly. We can assure people of that. But it will send a very, very strong message to government and employers that, one, we will not accept a poverty wage, which 20 rand an hour is, by all definitions that have been done by academics at universities. You would need at least 4,500 a month to be above the poverty level. It's still not a living wage, it's just about enough to survive on. Even if you work a full month at 20 rand an hour, and a lot of workers won't, you'll only get 3,500, which is simply well below poverty. And it's one thing, it's bad enough that employers are already paying even less than that to many workers, but that in no way justifies the government legitimizing and saying, well, it's perfectly acceptable that people should have to live on 20 rand an hour. It's not acceptable. And at the same time, we're protesting about changes to the labor laws, which are going to make it much, much harder, if not, as the General Secretary just said a few minutes ago on your program, impossible, because of the procedural obstacles that unions will now have to go through before they can get a protected strike with both the employers, the CCMA, the Department of Labour. It's already difficult. And many workers go on strike anyway without waiting for all these procedures. It's going to become worse, and we believe it may well be unconstitutional because the right to strike is clearly there in the Constitution, in black and white.
It seems as though, SAFTU has somewhat turned itself into an anti-government lobby union, again against Section 77, and once again going against the proposed minimum wage that has been put forward.
Well, we're certainly against many of the government's policies, particularly its economic policies, which we believe are linked to this, because the new president has made it quite clear that his priority is to attract investors into this country. And therefore, keeping wage bills low is what they want. But we as a trade union can't possibly support that. We want a living wage for all workers. And in the long run, this will be in the interest of everybody, because not only will it improve the lives of people, which is very important, but it will also give a boost to the economy, contrary to what all the capitalist economists say, because so many workers in South Africa, particularly the unemployed, of course, have virtually no money to spend. They just have to struggle to buy the absolute basics. If more people had more money, then it would increase the demand for goods, more jobs could be created producing those goods, and it would be in the interest of everybody.
Considering the amount of challenges that the labor environment is facing, how effective is a one-day strike?
It will be very effective as a protest. It won't fundamentally change things, but it will give a warning to government that they're pursuing policies which are opposed by thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of workers in South Africa, and they need to rethink. They are now redrafting all these pieces of legislation to take account of submissions to Parliament. SAFTU made one of those, and so we can only hope, although not with great confidence, that the Department of Labour will have listened to that and will make changes. But unfortunately, it's more likely to be just tinkering with the wording, and so the campaign will go on. This is just the start, because you're right, one day is not enough, but it's a very important start, and we will continue, and we hope that more and more people will join us. It isn't, by the way, just SAFTU. There's now a wide range of organizations already supporting us in civil society, and we hope that even more, even members of other unions, which are not affiliated to SAFTU, we're appealing to them to join this, partly as a way of telling their own leadership that they made a serious mistake at NEDLAC by agreeing to these proposals, which their members must surely now be regretting and indeed quite angry that their representatives, without, we believe, a proper mandate from their membership, agree to all these laws which are against their interests.
In terms of worker issues as well as unions, when do you think South Africa is going to be moving away from politicizing unions and workers' rights and actually focus on workers' issues and, away from politics aside, is there a plan for a proposition of a workers' party in the future?
There are certainly plans for a workers' party, and we will follow these with interest. But SAFTU itself is not aligned to any political party. We're an independent, but that doesn't mean we're apolitical. Fighting for workers' rights inevitably involves you in political discussions because people on the other side, the employers, will oppose what we're saying, and that inevitably then will draw in political parties into the debate. So you can't separate the two, and there's nothing fundamentally wrong with politicizing issues if that's the way in which they're going to be resolved, because clearly negotiating with the employers, while of course we do that on a daily basis, is not ultimately going to solve the workers' problems, because there are fundamental differences. And ultimately society as a whole has to take a decision as to what the priorities are. And we hope and are confident that if the issues are put clearly to the public, the overwhelming majority will say, well, SAFTU is right. 20 rand a wage is not enough. Particularly strange enough, the people who are opposing it are those who would be least likely to be able to live on 20 rand an hour. So yes, it's political, but political in a good cause.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. SAFTU's acting spokesperson, Mr. Patrick Craven, as SAFTU is set to embark on that strike tomorrow. Take a short break here on SABC's Newsroom. Do stay tuned.
SABCnews.com is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. With a website that is easy to use on mobile, SABC News prides itself in being the primary source of public service content across multiple platforms. Watch live streams of all the big news events on the SABC News YouTube channel, which is one of the most viewed South African YouTube channels globally. And catch up on the best of SABC television and radio news. Follow breaking news on all of the SABC News social media platforms, interact with SABC News on Facebook, and stay connected on Twitter for the latest headlines and real-time updates by our reporters. SABC News, everywhere.
Well, advocacy group Section 27 says it plans to appeal the judgment by the Limpopo High Court on the case regarding Michael Gomape. Well, the High Court has dismissed the R3 million claim by Gomape's family to compensate them for general and constitutional damages. 5-year-old Gomape drowned in a pit toilet at the primary school in Limpopo in 2014. Last year, the Education Department reached a partial settlement with the family and paid over 100,000 rand of that R3 million claim. Judge Khaled Muller has dismissed a request by Gomape's family that government should compensate the family for grief as well as constitutional damages. Dr. Faranaz Variava is the head of education at Section 27, and she now joins us for a quick chat on this. Very good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Essentially, can you confirm that the ruling is being appealed, and what are the reasons of that?
Yes, we do believe that there are very good grounds for appeal. We don't think that the judgment is completely bad. We think it's quite a mixed bag. There were many findings in the judgment that we think are affirming of the case that we brought. For example, the judge in the case held that the Department of Basic Education and the Limpopo Department of Education had violated the constitutional rights of learners in the Limpopo province. And while it didn't award damages to the Gomape family, what it did do was the judge gave a supervisory order. And that supervisory order says that the government must do an audit of schools in Limpopo. It must then develop a program for replacing pit toilets, for toilets that are accessible, hygienic, and most importantly safe. And it must report back to court on the 30th of July what it intends to do, how it intends to go about to implement that program. So while we think that is good, we think that the judge erred by it recognizes that Michael Gomape's death was a direct result of government's inaction, but it didn't award constitutional damages to the Gomape family, despite finding that the death was a direct result of the lack of government meeting its obligations. So we would like to appeal that aspect of the judgment. Obviously, we will be discussing the details when we meet with our legal team. We spoke to the Gomape family yesterday. A lot of our team that were in Limpopo spoke to the Gomape family, and we took instructions from the Gomape family, and we are continuing to speak to the Gomape family.
You know, this case got a lot of attention specifically in the media. Do you think that somewhat the judge was trying to avoid setting a precedent in this case?
Well, I think that a precedent is set in this case. The precedent in this case is that the court recognized that there was a violation on the part of the state. That is a precedent. But the precedent that he set was that he would focus on broader systemic relief for the province rather than relief for the family in particular. However, because of the way our courts work, we do not think that this precedent at the High Court level is sufficient. We therefore want to take it to the Supreme Court of Appeal and appeal it on that basis.
Again, a more direct response. Do you or do you not think that government was directly responsible for Michael's death?
We do think that government was directly responsible for Michael's death. The court has agreed that government was directly responsible for Michael's death. What it didn't do was award damages based on that. So it says that there was a direct link, and that is why we think there should be an appeal.
Well, this has definitely highlighted, a deeper-rooted issue, specifically in grassroots levels at schools, not only in Limpopo, but as well as other provinces that have come to the fore of having pit toilets at primary schools. How bad is the situation?
The situation is bad. At the end of 2013, government passed the norms and standards for school infrastructure. That said that pit toilets should be removed and had to be, in terms of the norms and standards, it had to be removed by 2016. Despite the existence of this law, there are still about 6,500 pit toilets all over the country, mainly in the Limpopo province and mainly in the Eastern Cape. So this is a problem. And as we know, in mid-March of this year, another 5-year-old girl, Lumka Maketwa, drowned in a pit toilet in the Eastern Cape. So it's a problem. It's a huge problem, and it will continue to be a huge problem for as long as there isn't a political will shown in getting rid of this. The judgment also notes that there was money to be directed to programs like fixing sanitation and in particular removing the pit toilets, and government didn't show the requisite urgency to do this. So the judgment even acknowledges that. And what we need now is to see a greater political will, not just on the basis of this judgment, but nationally as well. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has set the ball rolling in that regard after the death of Lumka Maketwa.
Definitely. Thank you very much for joining us here in studio. That was Dr. Faranaz Variava from Section 27, giving us a bit of background around the judgment in the case of Michael Momapwe. Let's move on now. Let's have a look now at our question of the day. We're asking, why do we revert to violence when we protest? We'll have a look at some of your tweets that have been coming through. This and more after the break. Welcome back to SABC's Newsroom. Well, the question we're asking this morning is, why do we revert to violence when we protest? So that's on the backdrop of the Northwest protests, and now also some of those protests taking place in the case Kamahuk in the Eastern Cape. Let's have a look at your comments. Izetzo says, that's the only language our government seems to understand very well. I highly condemn the use of violence during protests, but at the end of the day, the protesters have to do whatever it takes to get the attention they need from our government and the media as well. Lekasa says everyone has the right to protest, but damaging infrastructure is not allowed, and found damaging property should be brought to book and held accountable and charged with malicious damage. Michael says because authorities or those in power don't listen when you talk to them in a decent manner, like the civilized human beings that we are, violence is the only language that they understand, and also it gets their attention. Yeah, it seems so, and it seems to be having a knock-on domino effect. Let's have a look at our poll question. Do you support the planned SAFTU nationwide strike? Just speaking to spokesperson Patrick Craven, of course, it is set to take place tomorrow, with just over 500 votes coming in. 67% of you are saying yes, 33% of you are saying no. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that have been coming through behind those numbers. Abasa Ikona03 on Twitter says, unfortunately, we are not united in poverty, inequality and slavery because of betterment in some quotas. I will support the strike, but to listen, we must intensify to eradicate the class segregation with its viruses that we've heard now. Alakasa says, yes, I do support SAFTU. The ruling government is playing with workers. The ruling party doesn't want to end labour brokers. Enough is enough. And Michael says, a big yes from me. If employers want to pay peanuts, then they must get monkeys to do the job and not human beings. That's some very strong and honest tweets coming through on both our question and our poll. Let's cross over to Valen for some sports for a bit.
Thank you very much, Ante. Well, it's not just in service delivery protests and protests to get the government to listen that we have seen violence. It's something that we saw in the stadium, the football stadium, Moses Mabhida, this past Saturday from Kaiser Chiefs fans. Now, yesterday, the chairman of the PSL, Chairman Ivan Khoza, addressed the media, and we asked this morning, what do you make of the PSL's decision yesterday? We invited your comments at SABC Newsroom. Joy Azania says, glad for a quick response by the media and that an investigation will be done to gather evidence to change more. However, we need training at schools to teach respect for oneself, for others, for others' property, venting dissatisfaction and frustration through rampant thuggery, hooliganism and malicious damage. I suppose there, Joy is saying that we just can't have that. Right, and that's what a couple of you had to say when it comes to our question for the day. You can still weigh in on at SABC Newsroom. Shante, I believe you're going to take a look at the newspapers from around the continent.
Yes, definitely, Valen. And as always, we'll be starting off here at home in South Africa, headlining in our newspapers this morning. Well, the Citizen reports that the use of the K-word, especially by a former Robben Island political prisoner, was dehumanizing, horrible and defamatory. Investec chairperson Fanny Titi told the Randburg Magistrates Court yesterday. In Swaziland, or Eswatini as it has now been dubbed, says just a few days after celebrating his 50th birthday and celebrating 50 years of independence, His Majesty yesterday jetted out of the country in the brand new state jet to Angola. In Namibia, the Namibian reporting that Windhoek High Court Judge Harold Gea on Friday reserved judgment on an urgent application in which the head of Namibia's state spy agency is trying to prevent a weekly newspaper from publishing an article disclosing the alleged misuse of government properties by the former members of the spy service. The Canadian police say they believe a van driver who knocked down and killed at least 10 people in Toronto acted so deliberately. The United Nations has urged parties to the Iran nuclear deal not to abandon it. In a bid to raise awareness about climate change, one South African family is touring the African continent powered only by vegetable oil. Some African news: Egyptian presidential elections took place in March this year, the third since 2011. While authorities say the elections were free and fair and of high standard, according to the local electoral commission, critics and opposition have a very different view. In the run-up to the elections, 6 potential candidates were either jailed or withdrew. They cited harassment by state security services or obstacles to registering. The incumbent Abdel Fattah al-Sisi had little opposition, if any. And to unpack the political atmosphere in Egypt, we're now joined live in our Pretoria studios by Egyptian Ambassador to South Africa, Mr. Sharif Issa. Very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Well, given the developments in the build-up to the presidential elections, would you say then that the elections were indeed free and fair?
Good morning to you first, Ms. Chantal, and let me say a very good morning to your viewers. I believe and I can assure you that the elections in Egypt was free, and it was completely supervised internationally, and we had a delegation from the African Union who was in Egypt during the elections, and they have observed every procedure taken before and all through the election process. And that's why I'm assuring you that this was a free elections that ended up that President Sisi were re-elected for another 4-year term. And the political situation in Egypt is very stable, and there's no doubts that we are facing many challenges in the coming future that we need to work hard in order to overcome those challenges.
Definitely. Well, there was little opposition to al-Sisi's running. Would you then still say that Egypt is in fact a democratic state?
Yes, I can assure you that we are a democratic state. We have our constitution. The size of the opposition does not reflect whether the country is a democratic country or not. Some countries have no opposition at all, and others have a huge number of oppositions, but they're still a democratic country. In Egypt, we can say that we have a normal political life. We have opposition, we don't have a ruling party, we have a president, but again, I assure you that we are practicing democracy in the way that we believe that serves the good of the country and the good of the nation.
Indeed. Let's move on. Let's talk economy now. The incumbent president has now introduced new economic reforms. They are expected to improve the economy and the current state of Egypt. But it's said that it has left some citizens in a worse off position. Can you give us an update?
Yes, we have a plan for economic reform that the president is implementing in Egypt now with the government. And with the cooperation of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And this plan is now achieving good results, and this is what the World Bank is saying. So we can say that Egypt now is #1 in Africa, the biggest economy in Africa. We can say that we are achieving good economic results. The stability of the currency in Egypt, the exchange rate is now for over a year now, we have a stable exchange rate. The economic growth is also doing well in Egypt. The infrastructure is improving. Electricity, we used to have some hours of cut of electricity, but now we have a stable electricity in Egypt. So our economy is doing well. Yes, sometimes we pay for the economic reforms, and everybody is paying for that. But at the end, I think that the result will be for the good of the Egyptian people. And let me say that I would like to say that I'm very proud to be the Egyptian ambassador here in South Africa, this giant country and great nation. And I think that we have similar experience. So let's wait and see what would happen in Egypt with the economic reforms, and I'm 100% sure that this will come to the good of the people of Egypt.
Definitely. In talking about those relations between Egypt and South Africa, how would you describe the current relations between South Africa as well as the SADC region, between, of course, Egypt and the southern part of Africa?
Egypt and South Africa, this is a history of relation started on the 50s of last century and went on with the ANC up till 1994 when we had our embassy, and since then we had 6-7 ambassadors. I'm now the current ambassador in South Africa. The relations between the two countries, especially in the trade and economy, the volume of trade is 320 million this year, which does not reflect the power and the potentials of the two countries. Egypt and South Africa to the far south and the far north, and in between the two countries, we have many African countries. If we cooperate together, Egypt and South Africa, we can give a very good example and a very good model of cooperation between all the African countries. We have potentials and we are ready to cooperate together. Our political relations is 100% perfect. Trade, we need to increase the volume of trade, cooperation, training courses between Egypt and South Africa, building capacities. So we are working hard in order to improve our relations. We are not satisfied with the level of relations now. It is good, but we need it to be excellent. So that's what we are working for now. And Egypt is invited to attend the BRICS meeting here in South Africa. We'll be coming, and we will try to do our best in order to serve all the African continent, not only Egypt and South Africa.
Definitely. In terms of security and the Islamic State insurgents, what sort of challenges have they posed to Egypt, as well as how it has affected tourism to the country?
Yes. Tourism have been infected badly since 2011. But let me tell you that starting from this year, tourism, the number of tourism, have raised in Egypt with good signs. Although we are fighting terrorism on behalf of the world in Sinai, in the north of Sinai, in a very limited area in north of Sinai, South Sinai is receiving a huge number of tourism now to come from different countries. And let me tell you that South Africa, we received 30,000 tourists coming from South Africa to Egypt. So yes, tourism have been infected, but we are trying to overcome as you said, the security threats that limited the number of tourism, and we are doing very well in this area. We are fighting terrorism, and we will not give up until we are safe and stable.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Of course, Egyptian ambassador to South Africa coming to us live from our Pretoria studios, Mr. Sharif Issa. Let's take a short break here on SABC Newsroom. When we come back, more news updates and some sports.
This is your midday report. Good afternoon.
I will defend.
I assume as President of the Republic of Kenya.
Let's take a look at how African markets and currencies are performing now.
The central bankers say the success of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is just a bubble.
Breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
When life takes a different turn.
If I didn't eat the speak, he was going to evict me.
Your will to persevere is ignited.
I'm not a professional speaker, but I'll try my best to give you a word of inspiration.
He was just trying to provide for his family.
If you can't accept it, change it. If you cannot change it, accept it.
And a new story begins.
Made a resolve to myself
I'm learning something new.
Upilong, every Friday at 5:30. Be part of the life-changing journey.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Let's bring you your sports news. The South African Police Service in Durban have set up an investigation into the violent scene at Moses Mabhida Stadium last Saturday. This comes after PSL Chairman Ivan Khoza called for a change to the Sasria Act and claimed that an authorized official from the SAPS failed to attend a plenary session prior to the high-profile game. Spokesperson for SAPS KZN spokesperson Brigadier Jay Naika was speaking to Morning Live earlier. Please note the following visuals are graphic.
We've taken note of the comments in the media. The acting provincial commissioner has appointed a very senior team to investigate. This team is led by a Major General. They have begun the investigation yesterday. You must remember, in the beginning, the Office of the Acting Provincial Commissioner received a plan from the police station that was responsible for that precinct. In their plan, obviously, they informed us that that plan was informed by the risk assessment as well as the categorization of the event. We are now going through the plan to see that if that plan was executed as stated, whether the members from the SAPS, the private security and other security agencies were in place. And we're also going to see that if any of these deficiencies impacted on the violence that we saw in the stadium.
Yeah, but
following the resignation of head coach Steve Komphela, Kaiser Chiefs have decided that Patrick Mabedi will take charge of the first team for the remainder of the current season. The Malawian was the assistant to Komphela, who resigned after the team fell out of the Nedbank Cup at the semi-final stage. Mabedi, who played for Amakhosi from 1998 to 2006, takes over in the interim from former South African captain and centre-back Komphela, who failed to win a trophy during 3 seasons in charge. Meanwhile, the Premier Soccer League has charged Kaiser Chiefs with bringing the league into disrepute and misconduct. The charges followed the Nedbank Cup semi-final against Free State Stars. The aftermath saw the supporters invade the pitch, assault some supporters and security officials, and damage property at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban. Chiefs will appear before the PSL disciplinary committee next Thursday, the 3rd of May at 6 o'clock in the evening. Mabedi captained the Amakhosi to back-to-back premiership titles in 2004 and 2005 and will be assisted on the bench by Arthur Zwane. In European football, AS Roma are in England for the UEFA Champions League semi-final first leg match against Liverpool. When Roma agreed to sell Mohamed Salah to Liverpool last June, they could well have anticipated that the Egyptian would become a huge hit at Anfield. What they surely would not have expected was that Salah and Liverpool would stand between them and a place in the Champions League final.
Jurgen Klopp has urged the club's fans to show respect to Roma when they arrive at the stadium. The Reds are being investigated by UEFA after their supporters pelted objects at the Manchester City bus, causing damage as they arrived for the quarter-final first leg at Anfield earlier this month. Klopp said he wanted to see the same passion and noise from the Liverpool fans inside the ground, but better behavior on the streets outside.
This is such a fantastic football club, such an outstanding football family, known for fantastic atmospheres all over the world. So we don't need to throw whatever on the bus of the opponent team. If we can do what we did, creating an atmosphere even in front of the stadium, yeah, let's do it. I'm a big fan of that. But please show the respect they deserve.
Roma's primary task will be to stop their talisman Salah from adding to his impressive 41 goals in all competitions. The Egyptian has struck 8 times in the Champions League this season, second only to Cristiano Ronaldo of Real Madrid, who has scored 15 goals. Roma surprised many by reaching the semi-final of Europe's Premier Club competition. They stunned the Spanish giants Barcelona in the quarter-final. Roma came back from a 4-1 first leg deficit to win 3-0 at home and qualify on away goals. They are in the last 4 of the Champions League for the first time since 1984, the days of the old European Cup.
I was surprised that they, after the first result, that they can have that kind of comeback against Barcelona, because it's pretty rare.
Salah should not expect any favors from his former teammates.
The good thing is in football, I'm pretty sure the Italian defenders are famous for not having friendly games. So I think Mo will feel pretty early in the game that they are not his teammates anymore, and then he can strike back in a football way. That's it.
The match kicks off at 9:15 this evening. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
In tennis news, after winning his record-extending 11th Monte Carlo title, Rafael Nadal looked ahead to continuing a similar record at the Barcelona Open. World number one Nadal will be hoping to add to his run of 36 consecutive sets won on clay in Barcelona this week. Victory in Barcelona, where Nadal will be playing on a court named after him, would continue the preparations for the defense of his French Open title in Paris.
Yeah, here I am. Barcelona again is a tournament that I know very well. I feel a little bit like home, even if my home is Mallorca. You know, I am from this club, and I enjoy the fact that I can play here in front of my people.
And in cricket news, in a low-scoring Indian Premier League match, the Kings 11 Punjab edged the Delhi Daredevils to record a 4-run win. With the win, the Kings 11 moved to the top of the IPL standings on 10 points after 6 games, while the Daredevils remain rooted to the bottom of the table with just 2 points. Sitting at the bottom of the standings with a single win out of 5, the Delhi team would have been hoping for a change in fortunes, playing at home for the first time. However, they had their work cut out against the informed Kings 11, who have recorded 4 wins out of 5 in the current IPL campaign. Having won the toss and elected to field first, the Daredevils made a good start with the ball. Avesh Khan with the wicket of Aaron Finch in the second over. In desperate need of a win, the bowlers from the home side produced solid spells with the ball. Liam Plunkett with his maiden IPL wicket to dismiss Lokesh Rahul for 23. 2 overs later, Plunkett was at it again, this time responsible for the removal of Mayank Agarwal. The right-hander gone for 21 to leave his team on 61 for 3 after 8 overs. The Kings 11 appeared to be struggling to recover from the early setbacks. After 13 overs, they were on 86 for 4. Yuvraj Singh, the last batsman to be dismissed. That seemed to have set the tone for the remainder of their innings, as they went on to post a chaseable total of 143 runs for the loss of 8 wickets after 20 overs.
He's got to go. He struggled a little bit, Yuvraj, and he's gone. There's Mujib.
However, in reply, the Daredevils only managed 139 for the loss of 8 wickets after 20 overs, to fall short by 4 runs. That concludes Sport on Newsroom in this hour. Stay with SABC News. We're back after this.
A very good morning to you, and thank you so much indeed for choosing Morning Live.
But I want to know the basic thing.
Griselda Lewis, SABC News, in Parktown, Johannesburg.
Zimbabwe, Mzwandile Mbeje, SABC News, Luanda, Angola.
Let's take a look at your market indicators.
Thanks for staying with Morning Live. Let's bring you your sports news.
Let's take a look at your satellite image.
Set the agenda for the day with Morning Live.
The Western Cape needs national government to fulfill its mandate on ensuring the bulk water supply.
We must ensure that the city of Cape Town never confronts this particular situation again.
The ESCOM is serious about stamping out corruption, which is why the market is now beginning to accommodate us.
Looking at neighboring countries, expecting Botswana just to see partly cloudy skies with a high of 34 in Gaborone.
News today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Technology is used for both positive and negative. Some governments block the internet in times of protest.
With this internet blackout, it's impossible for me to do it, so I have to travel to Douala.
This act is a true violation of the rights of citizens.
In Africa, people are always coming up with innovative ways to use technology to solve some of their problems.
The more interesting piece of technology is actually the artificial intelligence.
AI, it's utilizing data to make your life easier.
On Network, we'll give you Africa's technology and social media news.
Catch Network with Spumelele Zondi every Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
With senior ANC leaders to visit parts of the Northwest in a new effort to defuse the relentless unrest. Meanwhile, residents of Eastern Cape Town of Keiskamahuk have woken to another day of protest following violence yesterday. The nationwide bus strike continues for the 7th day, with the Labour Department now entering the fray.
And later in sport, the Premier Soccer League has charged Kaiser Chiefs Football Club with bringing the league into disrepute and misconduct. The charges follow the Nedbank Cup fixture against Free State Stars, where supporters invaded the pitch, assaulted some supporters and security officials, as well as damaged some property at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban.
Hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Shante Yankees. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We'll keep you up to date this morning on the situation in Mahikeng, as well as the bus strike as it enters its 7th day, as well as news and the latest from the African continent. Valen Kirtley is also standing by with all your sporting highlights. Very good morning to you, Valen. Sporting-wise, what can we expect?
Good morning to you, Shante. Good to be with you. Good to be with our newsroom viewers. And there's lots to report when it comes to what happened on Saturday in Durban. And then also a look ahead to the UEFA Champions League semi-finals, which get underway tonight with the first leg of the semi-final tie between Liverpool and AS Roma. That's coming your way at 1:45 to the top of the hour. First, though, Shante's got your news.
Just gone 11 o'clock, while a 16-year-old boy reportedly died during a violent protest in Taung in the Northwest yesterday. Well, schooling in the area has been disrupted for a 4th day. The province has been mobbed by protests, with residents calling for Premier Supra Mahumopelo to step down over corruption allegations and poor services. We will be giving you more updates on that story. Very sad coming through. Violent protest actions in the Northwest do continue today to spread also to various parts of the province. At this time, residents of Stella near Vryburg have also joined in to demand better service delivery. Meanwhile, ANC leaders in the province are expected to meet today to shed light into the anti-Supra Mahumopelo campaigns. SABC's Selwane Kakao is monitoring the situation and has sent an update.
Well, today we're coming live to you from Stella, which is a small town not too far from Vryburg, where we were yesterday for these protest actions. So today we do see that residents have burned this municipal building right behind me. We're just quickly going to speak to one of the residents who can shed some light into what are their issues this morning. Okay, Ma, just tell me, we see the building is burned. What are the issues in this area?
ka dikgang tsa gore ba tle ka di-transfer di se ko sekolong mara ba mo kgone go tseiwa ba mo ga kgone go tseiwa di tse go dirilwang jana ka gore gate batho mo Stella ba dira ka apartheid le ba principal tsa teng. Hey, thank you.
Oh, okay, basically what she's saying right now is that what they want is employment opportunities for their children. We also hear that service delivery is a bit of a challenge in this area.
But ba bua ka khanya ya matlo ba bua ka khanya gore why go dirwa apartheid mo Stella apartheid se mo Stella ka gore le rona ga se re ntse di 40 ranta le ko sekolong tsa di toilet mara batho ba ba tsintso mo sekolong ba bangwe ba kgone go ntsha di 40 ranta rona ga re kgone go di ntsha ka gore re ba re ka dintsha ka di maelo a kgwedi.
Oh, okay. Well, the other issue that they're talking about in terms of service delivery is the issue of housing and toilets. It's coming across as their main concerns in regards to service delivery. Another issue of importance that we want to touch on is that the situation in Taung remains tense this morning. Schooling is still disrupted. People are still protesting in various areas of that part of Taung. We hear shops are still closed after some were looted yesterday. What we understand also is that the ANC leadership in the province, or all regional leaders of the ANC as well as the Provincial Executive Committee, will be meeting today, briefing the media about what they believe to be a secret operation that is behind this anti-Supra Mahumapelo protest actions that we are seeing spreading across various areas of the Northwest. We'll definitely be giving you an update a little bit later on at that press briefing. Back to you for now, studio.
Well, service delivery protests continue this morning in Keiskamahuk in the Eastern Cape. Residents are demanding roads and proper housing. Well, yesterday a municipal building was set alight. Protesters then threatened to target SASSA offices. Well, police had to use rubber bullets to disperse gathering crowds. SANCO members in the area saying they want President Cyril Ramaphosa to come and listen to their demands. Protesters say they won't be letting up their grievances until they have been addressed. Well, service delivery protests in Keiskamahuk has entered day 2. SABC's Busisewe Jemsana is in the area and she sent us the report currently.
Following an incident where they torched alight this municipal building, there were threats that they would torch also the SASSA and post office buildings, but that did not happen. After we left, they clashed with the police. We are told that some were arrested and some were released. We are not sure yet if there are people who are in police holding cells, but since this morning, I can tell you, Shante, it has been quiet. Residents have started to gather around. Just across me over there are residents who have gathered. They have started singing songs and chanting songs, but police are also on the ground. We saw them removing what was left from the burning tires, the trees that were used to blockade the roads. They are adamant that they will continue with their protest until President Cyril Ramaphosa comes down. We know that at 9:30, the Premier of the Eastern Cape, Phumulo Masualle, is going to be holding a media briefing, updating the province as to what has happened and the issues around Keiskamahuk. The briefing will be in Bisho, in his offices. We are told that he will be touching on what is to happen. If you remember, Shante, 3 weeks ago, when the protest started, residents were calling upon the Premier and the chairperson of the province of the ANC to come and address them. Unfortunately, the Premier could not be available for that. ANC chairperson Oscar Mabuyane did come down and said to them that they will come back. They've had their grievances and it is things that he sees as authentic and they have every right to demand them. And they will come back as the leadership of the ANC and MECs in the relevant departments to come and address them. Call an imbizo to actually give a feedback on the things that they've done and the things that are to be done on the list of grievances that they submitted. 7 days passed and nothing was done. They did not come, but we know that SANCO has been in constant meetings with the provincial leadership in efforts to try and find a solution.
Labour unions representing striking bus workers are set to meet with employer associations today at a meeting facilitated by the Department of Labour. The meeting is another attempt at resolving the strike, now on its 7th day. Talks between the employers and unions deadlocked last Friday. Thousands of bus drivers are demanding wage increases as well as better working conditions. Unions want a 9.5% salary increase, while employers are offering 8.5% for the first year and 8% for the second year. Public transport in Cape Town was further hampered after signal equipment failure that left more commuters stranded on Metro Rail's Northern Line. Thousands of commuters are already scrambling to get to work in minibus taxis due to the ongoing bus drivers' strike. SABC's Nomawethu Solwandle sent us the report.
It's certainly been a very busy morning for us here in Cape Town. We started off at Nyanga Junction, the train side, and we spoke to a couple of commuters there because ever since the bus strike started, we've been focusing a lot on the taxi side of things, where we saw snaking queues at various taxi ranks around the city of Cape Town. So today we decided to focus a little bit on the train commuters, and train commuters were actually telling us that, it's not because of the bus strike. They've faced a number of challenges for a number of years where they are dealing with trains that are constantly delayed. And another important thing that came out from those commuters was that sometimes trains just actually stop in the middle of nowhere. They never told what's going on. They become victims of crime. So on our way from Nyanga to Belleville station, we actually saw this happening where trains had literally stopped for a number of hours. This one that you see going past here is actually one of those trains that was actually delayed here. We saw a number of commuters actually getting off the train, making other alternatives to get to their different work spaces or to school or to wherever they were going. But it's a serious inconvenience when it comes to trains here. I'm just going to speak to some of the commuters that have been standing around here. When we arrived here, they said that they had been delayed for at least 3 hours. So I'm just going to speak to them just to find out their views. So you were actually in one of the trains that stopped here indefinitely. Just tell us about your experience.
My experience, I can tell you, my experience is an everyday thing. It's an every week thing. You're always late. You send photos to your supervisors. You send photos to management. They will say you're downloading these photos. And it's a big problem when it comes to us commuters that actually travel this train and actually rely on and depend on PRASA, because majority of Cape Town or of South Africa travels via train. And you come late every day at work. I start 7:30. I get on a train in the morning, every morning, 20 to 6. And 20 to 6, that train left now just 9:30, if I'm exact words. So I just think that somewhere we should meet along the line, because it can't happen like this every day. Every day is the same excuse. So I don't see that they're putting in extra effort. And at the end of the day, we're paying for tickets and we're losing out money at work. So we're losing out either way and we're not gaining nothing from PRASA.
How often does this happen? Because when I arrived, I saw a PRASA vehicle actually arriving to fix the situation. How long had you been standing here, and had anything been communicated to you?
Nothing else. If you're on like stranded in the middle of nowhere, nothing is. They don't communicate with you. Nothing. Like they came now, if I can be exact, before 9. They arrived here, and the train was standing here before 6 o'clock this morning.
Well, the nationwide bus strike has entered the 7th day today with no end in sight for commuters. The Transport and Allied Workers Union has confirmed that parties will re-enter talks today. SABC's Mangoba Mkulu earlier went to the city centre to see how commuters are still struggling with morning congestion at various taxi ranks.
Of those commuters continues as they face yet another day without transport. Of course, this being one of the few loads that are now being loaded of those bus commuters who have been waiting here for hours. I can tell you that arriving here this morning, there were scenes of chaos here at this taxi rank. I mean, the queues that we saw here this morning stretching hundreds of meters away from the taxi rank itself and on its perimeters as well, showing that really this bus strike strike is really having an impact in terms of those people, the numbers of the people that they've had to accommodate here in order to try and get to work. And of course, many of them not getting used yet, Shante, to the fact that this strike is still going on 7 days later, saying that there should have been some sort of a resolution by now, but they're saying, of course, that they are hoping that that will happen today when those talks resume. But of course, it's not only impacting those commuters as well only, but seemingly also the taxi drivers are also feeling the pinch of this impasse. One of them here I'll speak to now is Sakile Mieza. Sakile, you were just telling me a few minutes ago that US taxi drivers as well now have to take extra loads of commuters due to the strike, and that you're really not coping.
Yeah, ukustrike kwamabhasi kusi-affectile kakhulu, kodwa ke noma kuwukuthi phela thina asithinteki ngaleyo ndlela, kodwa abantu bayaphazamiseka ngoba phela abantu basebenza ngesikhathi, itaxi iyahlala ilinde, but nathi siyabona ukuthi umsebenzi uthanda ukuba ngaphe wethu. Khona siyabona ukuthi umsebenzi uthanda ukuba nzimanyana ngoba phela thina abantu siyabalinda. Manje abantu uyabona ukuthi bayakhala, bayacomplain, isikhathi siyabashaya. Manje that's why ngathi manje umsebenzi uthanda ukuba nzimanyana nje ngoba phela abantu basebenza ngesikhathi, basuke bejahe emsebenzini bayangena. Manje nathi siyaphazamiseka, sithandi kanjalo ngoba phela kunabazali bethu lana nehlobo nobhuti into efana nalezo. So manje ingakho ngathi lento yamabhasi ingagcina ilungile, abantu bebuyele emsebenzini besebenze ngohlelo ngoba abantu bazophelelwa imisebenzi, kunzima ukuthola umsebenzi ubusebenza imisebenzi ngesikhathi samanje ayisatholakali. So manje that's why nje ngathi lento ingagcina ilungisekile, abantu begcine bebuyele emsebenzini, inkulumo yabo ihlangana.
Of course, one of the taxi drivers here at the North Taxi Rank explaining the difficulty that they have, saying that it's also a lot of work for them, saying that for him, what really disturbs him is to see people arriving late at work, and he hopes that this bus strike will be resolved soon so that people will be able to get to work on time.
Well, Cape Town Mayor Patricia de Lille is to face a second motion of no confidence tomorrow. This after a majority of the DA's City Caucus voted in favour of tabling the motion last week. De Lille survived another motion brought by the DA through a vote of the full council in February. But this time her fate will lie solely in the hands of her colleagues. De Lille will deliver what could be her last address as mayor at tomorrow's full council meeting. After the meeting, the caucus that she's been leading until her suspension from party activity late last year will meet behind closed doors to vote. If the vote succeeds by a simple majority of 154 members present, the decision will be passed to the DA's federal executive. The FedEx gave the go-ahead for a vote against de Lille last week. If it goes against her, she will be able to make representations to the executive as to why she should keep her job. The Scopa is currently on a hearing on the South African Airway Annual Report, financial statement, irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure for the 2016-2017 financial year. Let's cross live.
No, can then move to another area of focus. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's as I remember it. Thank you very much. And my apologies for not so much of the old, but yes, previous member perhaps. But the question of the going concern is certainly an issue, and one of the difficulties that I have with the report is that it's not time bound. So the report was signed off on, I think, in the financial report was signed off on the 6th of December by the chair and the CEO. And then the comments on going concern on page 50, kind of, I'm not sure what date those figures actually apply to. Do they apply back to March 2017, or do they apply as at the 6th of December 2017? That I find a little difficult, because I mean all these figures about how much was owing and so on, and then it moves on to talk about 25th of October 2017, the minister, and then the payments to the various banks at 2.2. So I think that this whole question of a going concern is fraught in the sense that it's not at a specific point in time. It's at some time after the financial year that there was a decision taken that now it's a going concern. And so I would assume that as at the date you signed off the financials, you made the going concern assumption as at that date, not as at the 31st of March 2017, whereas the Auditor General had long since finished his audit and done his report, and therefore his going concern comments might apply at a different point in time. So I really do think that the Honourable Smith's point is a valid point. I don't really understand about this going concern. Okay. And then added to that is the report that you're going to present to SCOA. And Mr. Chairman, I really do want to beg Parliament to somehow reduce the amount of time that we expect SAA executives to spend in front of us. I mean, I can't imagine how difficult it must be to try and turn this airline around when we keep calling them here. Today they're here, tomorrow they're at SCOA, in a week or two they're before us at Finance. And about 2 weeks ago they were before us as well. And we know there's a crisis, no one doubts that. But I really would beg us to try and look at how we're dealing as a Parliament with SAA, okay, and for comment. But let me move on with the going concern, Mr. Chairman.
Are you not done with the going concern?
No, I'm not, Mr. Chairman. So
I'm getting concerned.
The going concern. The concern, the going concern status. You see, this presentation for tomorrow at SCOA, bold at the bottom of slide 9, and it's referring to the so-called bailouts, the 10 billion. And it goes through where the money has gone and so on. And then it says, this position is already unsustainable. Now that's tomorrow, not 6th of December or the 31st of March last year. That's tomorrow you'll be saying to us that the position, cash flow position, is unsustainable and will become significantly worse without immediate intervention. Immediate intervention, Mr. Chairman, not 12 months' time, going concern period, immediate. So even though the 10 billion has been now paid because the last payment was due at the end of March, there's a cash crisis, if I read this correctly. So then, to get back to the going concern thing, I get even more confused because it's not 12 months since the 6th of December.
Okay.
And the going concern assumption relied on getting the 10 billion rand. The 10 billion rand, I have to assume, has now been paid because it had to be paid by the end of March.
All right,
the going concern status no longer.
No, that's fine. Let's allow them to explain that. I think Comrade Vincent adequately captured it in terms of what the AG is saying and what they themselves are saying.
Chairman, if I may respond, just insofar as the going concern matter is concerned, there are two matters. One is whether we have enough cash to see us through for a period of 12 months. The board and the AG had concluded on the 6th of December 2017, the AG on the 8th of December 2017, that we'll have sufficient cash to see us through for a 12-month period. And that addresses a commercial solvency question, whether we have enough cash to last 12 months. The second part of it is the factual insolvency. We have about 18 billion rand of net equity deficit, with the commitment from the shareholder that they would put in 10 billion rand would drop at a point in time the deficit to 8 billion, but then of course from March 17 we've been incurring losses, so that number would probably have grown by March 2018 to about 13 billion. And then we had the sovereign guarantee. We have a sovereign guarantee of about 17 or 18 billion rand. So the board and I believe the AG would have concluded that factually we've addressed a factual insolvency position because we could rely on government guarantees to redeem some of the guaranteed debt. Chair, I just thought I'll address that matter and hopefully give some clarity on it.
All right. No, that's fine. Comrade Kuno, I know that we... Brother Seth, just a minute. Oh yeah, yeah.
Chair, what we have, we are dealing with history, and it's a history that predates us without outsourcing it. But what we have done since November, there is a close working relationship between National Treasury and Oversight Forum that is managing looking at making quick decisions on the issues that pertain to the turnaround strategy, which is chaired by the Deputy Finance Minister. We meet bi-weekly. So far, we've been meeting weekly to look at the issues. So the ability to fast-track decision in that regard. So those are the instruments that are already in place now to fast-track decisions. But also, it may well be that the analysis done inside SA may not have been done in good time, which is what we are putting in place. Quick analysis of business cases, working closely with the shareholder to make decisions. If you look at the speed at which we have executed the market rebalancing in the domestic market has been record time for SAA, and with a board that is closely involved in terms of governance and oversight, with a shareholder that is very responsive. So we have created a new framework of doing things faster. Obviously, the history, it's very difficult to explain why things took too long. It's right. In between.
No, that's fine. Well, we deal with history in this committee. That's what we deal with.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to point out to this board is you'll do yourself a massive favor if you get onto the ground and listen to your staff. When we did our oversight, we found that the staff were simply not being listened to. Don't sit in your ivory tower with your plans. Talk to your sales staff. Talk to your other staff. They've got some good ideas. Just on that point, thanks.
Right, Comrade Kuno.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thanks for the opportunity. Let's start to where it all matters, the root causes of everything. And I'm glad that the Deputy Minister is here and all your compliment. The Chairperson is here as well. The root causes is that there's no record keeping. That's what the AG has said in his report. What are you doing to deal with record keeping? If you don't have records, we'll sit here, we'll listen to you talking about big, ways, but we'll never achieve what we want to achieve, record keeping. And maybe I do not expect an answer from you only, but to the internal auditors. Where are the internal auditors? Because my next question is coming to you. Can we go to record keeping?
Right.
What are you doing?
In terms of
on everything, record keeping. Record keeping.
Yes. I'm addressing that, Chair. We have to put systems in SAA of making sure that there's record keeping. Also, there's history. Part of the findings that are there, for example, is the loss of institutional memory where things were kept in a manual format. So if you go far back, I must also say that the AG went multiple years back to go and find the source, the primary source of record. So for example, because they were the new auditors, they had to go and find the base platform, the foundation of the audit to satisfy themselves. So the moment you go multiple years back, you will find that the advert that was put out there and the initial procurement of a particular item is not in the system. And those are some of the things that we're finding which creates problems.
No, but the question is, why is there poor record keeping?
SA has had a management instability and has been acting people throughout SAA. And that's what we find when we got to SA in November last year. So the people left with documents, there was no system of control. These are the things that we're putting in place. Maybe Kenneth, you want to add?
Through you, Chairperson.
The SA environment is very manual driven. So there's an over-reliance on paper coming to the offices throughout the procure-to-pay cycle, contract cycles. Look, there's a problem with the historical records. We're trying to actually start rebuilding those
The
up.
question is, you rely on paper. Why are those papers not kept? And I thought he had responded. Continue, comrade. I think he has responded. There have been instability, people living with documents. That's it.
Sorry, Chair.
No, I wanted to move on to a next question because your explanation does not assist us.
What's not going to assist any one of us is when we start to be defensive in our approach. SAA has a problem, and we can all acknowledge that. And I think if we work together, I listened to what my colleague here was saying, that we're calling you more in Parliament than you are supposed to be doing your job. Unfortunately, in Scopa, we do things differently. We want to see results. We are results-driven. And if you come here and become defensive, it's not going to help us at all. If we do not have documents, we do not have documents. And how long have you been employed as the internal auditor?
I've been at SA for just over 6 years now.
6 years. The AG says that one of the reasons why they didn't have your audit outcome on time is because you failed from SAA to be audited. You failed, you were late. What was the problem?
Oh, I think that should be answered by the CEO, not internal audit. Because that's a management function, isn't it? Yeah.
But Chairperson, if you look at it, sorry to interrupt you. I agree they have to feed the information for that information to go to the management. And the fact that he has just come in, thumb-sucking information won't help us at all as well, Chairperson. We need to get to the facts. And the people who have been there, they would know the facts. That's why I'm asking the internal auditors, because without you feeding that information into the system, then that information won't be in the system at all. That's why I'm asking.
I think the issues that have been raised by AG as internal auditor, most of them we also did surface them. But now, when coming to actually now implementing and taking action to fix the issues, that's where then as internal audit we need to step back, because we also have that independence that we have to guard against. So as much as the issues that we've surfaced them, we do have that, I don't know whether I can call it a challenge, where we cannot become part of management and fix them. The best I can do is to keep on reminding them, whether monthly or every second month, to say, this is the issue, please fix it before this and this and this happened. That we do do as internal audit.
Chair, I must add and say, when I got to SAA, then this audit was on flight. And one of the things we have noticed in the finance area was capacity constraints, especially around dealing with some of the legacy matters that has to do with access to information, making sure we can provide the right information in the format that the OIG wanted the information, keeping in mind that it was AG's first audit of SAA, and they had to rely a lot onto historical record to find the platform to audit, justifiably so. So what the CFO at that time did indicate to me that they have constraints in terms of capacity to actually go back into the archives and pull the information, especially given that a lot of is in the manual form. The answer is around capacity and also putting systems of control, which we are dealing with today.
Thank you. Thanks, Chairperson. You have, I know that my focus area is on procurement and contracts and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And I thought, Chairperson, I wouldn't go straight to that if I do not talk about the issues that I've started with. You have a staff complement of 10,071. And the AG is saying, of all those 10,000 staff, whether you are short-staffed or what, it's not an issue. The issue is that there is no competence. I think my colleague earlier on asked you on, for some report. And I think the report that will help us is to have a skills report, skills audit report, where if we're saying and we are committed to try and turn SAA around and actually not talk about these things without following up on them and making sure that they do happen. If we do not take the necessary skills, match the skills around, we're going to be, walking around in circles, talking about the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm not sure if you have anything to say about that.
Chair, it is correct that part of the challenge, and we've articulated this, that part of the challenge, they say, is certain levels of the organization where there's especially at the executive level, in certain parts, whether it's in commercial, we do have a challenge of capacity and capability in terms of the skill. That's part of the challenge with the turnaround of the organization. What we are doing around this, as we have been clear that part of the strategy is to build a fit for the future commercial focus airline. And we have developed an operating model, the kind of how will SAA that is like other successful airlines look like in terms of the structure and competence. The board has approved that. We are going to go through the organizational design process, which will have to look at all of us in terms of being fit for the future. And that's part of where we're going to pick the skills gap and be able to place the people in the right position based on skills.
No, that's fine. Hoping that you're going to last the full term of your contract, because if you leave, it will come down to zero. So I hear you. Yes, comrade. And
also promise him that we are really watching you. All of you, we are watching you. Let's go to fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And the AG says that they were internal auditor. You do not have systems that could have prevented this fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And we're talking about the amounts up to 40 million, 2016-17, a lot of amounts that have escalated throughout the years that we're talking about as far as fruitless and wasteful expenditure is concerned. So it means if you had systems in place with the airline that is really finding it hard to find its feet, this luxury of having fruitless and wasteful expenditure, I mean, we're talking about a lot of money, 125 million. We're talking about for 16-17 financial year, 5.4, 2015-16, 68.5 million, 2014-15 financial year. What systems do you have in place to make sure that you prevent this?
As far as the systems are concerned, I agree with the AG findings. They are factually correct. Currently, the systems we have are not adequate at all. Okay. Are not adequate at all. I think the documentation first, as AG has indicated in their reports, it's not there. our supply chain management policies, sometimes it does have gaps where you find that maybe when we procure, we are not able to timely identify the areas where we can incur fruitless and wasteful expenditure. As the CEO has already indicated, we know about the gaps. They are being prioritized. We have appointed people to try and assist us as far as closing those gaps. As I indicated, our weaknesses are both at the systems level, at the IT systems, and also at the policy levels. So
just hang on a minute. Expired contracts or no contracts? This is when we were there. We found that your legal department was manned by 1 or 2 people, and yet all the contracts have to be processed by those people. That's why you were contracting people through this letter of award or something like that. So we're not yet there at the systems and policies than that you did not have the capacity to timelessly process. By the time the AG come to audit a contract that was 1 year, 6 months, it has expired and the contract has not been processed.
Chair, let me address, as a starting point, the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, but also start with contract management. Contract management in terms of resources in the legal department, but also just the systems. Because if you register the contract into a system that flags the start and end dates, it enables the contract management aspect. You are able to get an early trigger when that contract will expire. So we have a double challenge of both people and systems. Today, we have managed to get an interim head of legal because SA has had acting people. So these things get done when the leaders who are committed to make things work. Now, she started in April, 1st of April. We're doing all reviews of contract, working with Kenneth Pillay, who started in April as well. Between procurement and legal, we put in leaders who are going to put the right framework, but we need to put systems in place so that the people who are the acquiring people can put in the system to flag what needs to be done. One of the challenges we have today at SAA is that because last year the board had decided to say contracts will not be extended or SA will not enter into contracts longer than 6 months. Now we have that the 6 months contract can be burdensome in terms of concluding them consistently over a 6 months period. The board has taken a different decision moving forward. So we have a backlog that we need to work on of 6 months contract, which in turn does create problems from a pure audit point of view. So we have to work, so there's more work as a result of where SAA was last year. So Chair, capacity, systems and leadership is a challenge.
Yeah, move to fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Yes. What's a pity the 2 people I want to address are conversing. Because you see, Comrade Deputy Minister and Chairperson of the board, the responses that we're getting, it's almost like we're building an entity from anew. And all of those are products of lack of continuity, which the board must take responsibility for and the ministry must take responsibility for. You might be talking all nice things here, and then 3 months down the line, we hear that he has been suspended. And then you have Maluleke acting. And then, so we keep on starting all the time. But it's fine. Talk to the fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
And I will ask my colleagues to back me here. There are largely 3 drivers of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. One relates to still visa fines in terms of the big contribution. The visa fines, then we are in the schedule that we shared, we are clawing back from the companies that who are servicing us in the visa administration. So visa fines are a big component. The second component in this area is the claims in Brazil, where in Brazil there is a specific challenge around claims where if the customer, perhaps an in-flight entertainment system didn't work, they can claim even the emotional upheaval that you suffered by not watching this thing, more than just the standard claim. So these are specific laws that we're battling with in Brazil. We're putting on high alert because in court, often you lose against the customer claim in Brazil more often than any other country. So we're working, therefore, with IATA to make sure that there's an alignment of what those claims would look like. So you'll see there's a spike in the Brazil scenario. And the last part also is around late payments. Some of the suppliers begin to want to charge interest because at that point in time, we would not have been able to pay them within the required time, which reflects the financial situation at SA at the time. So, and obviously there are things that the Auditor General has raised around the planning of the return of aircraft. In the year, the 2016, the year we are closing, part of the decisions that happened was that because of the 6 months contract, the board could not extend narrow-body aircrafts to stay longer at SAA, so there was an unplanned exit of those aircraft. So that does come in as an issue that you pick up as an audit issue in this regard. But a lot of these issues are as a result of the circumstance of SAA, one in terms of skill and capability, but most importantly, the kind of difficult financial context in which we operated, including interest payments, the Brazil issue, visa fines, and the exit, unexpected exit of narrow-body aircrafts. And when you audit them, it comes as unplanned work on aircraft returns.
There's also 46 million on management accounts. That's a problem as well. But Chairperson, when we talk about fruitless and wasteful expenditure, I also wanted to go on to duplicate payments. We need to have that report. Who have you doubled payment or duplicated payments to, and how are you, as SAA, trying to get that money? How far are you with the process? We need names of those companies and the people who are in the procurement supply chain, who are dealing with that, what has happened to them. And Chairperson, maybe before he answers, we had a problem before when we went to SAA of some of the employees that didn't want to be vetted, which I think it's the problem. If you don't know who you are dealing with in the first place, trying to get into making them committed to what they are supposed to be doing, it's going to be a fruitless, waste of time, because nobody's going to take you serious because they're not committed. You don't even know who they are, but you have employed them. So maybe coupled to your response, if you could tell me about that as well, if you could just, because it was one of our concerns.
Chair, if I may come in on the overpayments. The first issue, I think maybe I would want to separate the two on them, in that there's one where there's clear possible overpayments. There was an error by staff members who have actually declared and recovered the monies. So they managed to invoice the companies to get the monies. The second part, which was raised by the AG, was possible overpayments, which was with regard to the contract lifecycle management system, which is currently not fully functional. Currently, we're working with IT. They are trying to get a new system, I think it's called Ariba, that will assist us in terms of contract loading, to manage the payments. Because currently what's happening is that what the AG did is they actually went to the finance guys, took a list of payments, and then they wanted to see the contracts linking to the payments. But what you find out is that on one supplier, there could be different purchase orders. And the contract life cycle management system doesn't provide you that, the detail. So this is what the Arriva system will assist us in terms of getting to mitigate the issue of possible overpayments.
All right.
Chairperson, that money was not your money or anybody's money. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the SAA, which is sinking them. And we do not want to, what you are saying is it's contrary to what the AG has said. They are there, they've been in your offices for 11 months now. So they know what they're talking about. And the system that you're talking about is something that you're thinking of right now. I don't think it's there at all. But we want names of those supply chain, or whoever. Are they called managers or but supply chain? We want to know the names and those contracts that they've duplicated. But also, CEO, I want to tell you what you are inheriting. There's evergreen projects, contracts, that don't come straight because of the 6 months that you are talking about. What they will do, they collapse the system so that maybe 5 months just before the contract expires, you will be forced to sign and make sure that whatever is happening goes on. That's why they can take you to court for interest, because they know that you'll always forever give them, extra contracts. That's the problem that you are inheriting. And if we do not get into the bottom of that, the transformation that you are speaking about in your annual report, it will never happen, because we'll forever have the same people coming on board in different names or in different way, and actually suppressing other incomers to come on board.
Yeah, Chairperson, just to quickly tell you, there's a manual process put in on the procurement side and on the payment side to control any transaction that's actually going through the system.
People are doing this manual process.
So we've got about 20 on the supply chain side and about 10 on the finance side. We've put in controls in place where before any payment is actually processed on our financial systems, all checks and balances will be done. Whether there's a contract in place, what values have we paid that contracted to eliminate the duplication of payment. But ma'am, honorable member, we will submit a duplicate payment report through the chairperson. With regards to the evergreen contracts, I fully agree with you. Contracts have come in from early 2000s and continued. We're taking entire stock of every contract that is held by the SAA group, so that's corporate as well as the subsidiaries across the board, so we can find out exactly when did contracts start and what is the necessity. There is a report here. Some of it is out of necessity. Airports across the world use certain providers of services for ground handling, etc. But some evergreen contracts don't make sense to us at all, and we're busy investigating those, Honourable Member.
Yeah, my colleagues will deal with that. There is no testing of contract management. That's why you are, instead of profiting, you are losing every day. And I know that you have spoken about the study about aviation all over and how are they making profit, and you are losing out. It's because nobody tests this thing. You know, that is why it's only in South Africa where you find open skies like we're doing. How does British Airways and all those aircrafts or airlines profit in our own country and we are not profiting? Is it because, and why do you, instead of going to, I mean, we have PIC that can actually give you an interest, a lower interest in terms of loaning Why do you have to go to banks and, you know, pay so much interest in banks when you can do it easier and cheaper? Please, we must stop sleeping. Can we just all wake up and say, this is our country, we're going to guard what we have with everything that we have and make sure that SAA does not become, just say, you know, at least when I'm here, chairperson said maybe after 6 months you'll be gone. And say, well, no, for my 6 months when I was there, something has happened.
Well, why don't we, comrade, let the deputy minister note that issue of the open sky policy, because I think it is national treasure. I think it was Pravin Gordhan who was the minister at that point, which, as you correctly point out, SAA does not have those rights in other countries, but other airlines in South Africa, they can just go anywhere and everywhere. And yet we have an airline that is bleeding, that needs money. So we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. So I think, Comrade Deputy Minister, maybe just note that question and we can maybe talk to it actually when he responds, because that's also a critical question.
And they didn't answer the vetting part, Chairperson. But also when the Deputy Minister comes later, we need to see the management account. When, at least because coming to us is going to be a mission. And check, you know, it's always when we're doing accounting 101 at varsity, you'll be told about the, you know, the income. What is that thing? Where you are actually recording everything that comes per day, all the routes that you're having, and how does that come into the revenue of SAA? Because it's one of the problems that you are inheriting. You'll find that it takes forever before it comes to SAA. That's why you are instead of gaining, you are losing out. Can you answer the vetting part?
Yes, Chair. On the vetting part, we have a portfolio of employees who have been vetted. What we have to reconcile is whether everyone has been vetted. There's a portfolio that HR has responded.
No, wait. We know not everyone has been vetted.